Chapter 340. Lu Shui opened it with a smile. The first item is a magic sword created by the famous master blacksmith XXX. The master named it Wind Chaser. This sword is made from 15 types of high-grade ores, and the hilt is embedded with a 9th-rank wind element magic beast core. When swung, this sword is extremely fast. Only a top-tier swordsman can withstand its attack. The starting bid for this item is 500 gold coins. Each bid won't be lower than 50 gold coins. There's no upper limit. The auction for the Wind Chaser sword begins now. 1,000 gold coins. I bid 1,100. 1,200. 1,500. The bidding continued. Ming Shi and the others were seated in the box, so they could clearly see what was happening outside. However, the people outside couldn't see them. This sword isn't bad. It's only the first item, and the price is already over 1,000. How much more will the rest be? I originally wanted to just casually bid, but I didn't expect the items here to be so expensive. Margaret smacked her lips. Hearing the rising numbers, she felt like a poor person. Normally, a magic sword like this could fetch a maximum of 5,000 gold coins if sold outside. However, that might not necessarily be the case here. This is where the charm of an auction lies, Ming Shi said with a faint smile as she took a sip of the fruit tea that had just been served. That's true. I feel like even I want to bid. If I don't bid once at an auction, I feel like I'm missing something. Mo Gue nodded in agreement. Fengwu, the snacks are so delicious. 6,000 gold coins going once, going twice, going thrice. Sold. After Lu Shui knocked 3 times, the auction was finally over. The Wind Chaser sword is finally won by customer number 117 for 6,500 gold coins. Let us congratulate customer number 117 for winning the item he wanted. A round of enthusiastic applause rang out. Customer number 117 was a middle-aged man as thin as a bamboo pole. Seeing so many people clapping for him, he was so excited that his face turned red. He had probably never been the center of attention in his life. Next up was the second auction item. This item was a magic staff. Moreover, its level wasn't low. It could be considered a relatively good magic equipment. In the end, this magic staff was sold for a price that wasn't far off from the wind-chasing sword. At this time, in a certain box, a beautiful girl wearing a blue robe with blue hair down to her waist was looking at the catalog sent by the auction house. Irene, do you have something you want? Tell me what you want. If you don't have enough money, I'll help you. The girl in white said playfully. This woman in white was not an ordinary person. She was the little princess of Cloud Water Country. Her name was Elisa, and she was a very innocent and cute little princess. After Irene and her team members completed their mission, they happened to hear about the opening of the Sea God's tomb. Irene thought that the opening of the Sea God's tomb this time was a great opportunity for women. In this trip to the tomb of the Sea God, Zicheng had obtained the Heart of Water, which all water spellcasters yearn for even in their dreams. The Heart of Water was the crystallization of water elemental magic. There would only be one Heart of Water in the entire continent. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to nurture a Heart of Water. Without tens of thousands of years of accumulation, it would be impossible to successfully condense a Heart of Water. Water spellcasters who obtained the Heart of Water would advance rapidly as if they had a cheat. Moreover, there would be no side effects. Zicheng was originally a 5-element spellcaster. Cultivating all 5 elements, the Heart of Water would be of great help to her. It was because she obtained the Heart of Water in this place that the woman knew the benefits of the Heart of Water. She began to search for the Heart of Metal, Heart of Wood, Heart of Fire, and Heart of Earth. At the end of the novel, Zicheng really succeeded in collecting all of them. Moreover, he took the Heart of 5 elements and ascended to the heavenly realm. She could not let the Heart of Water fall into the hands of the female lead and become her super cheat. Originally, the favorability system was already a cheat. She did not want the female lead's cheat to continue increasing. At this time, the reason why Irene appeared at this auction was because she knew that the female lead would obtain another opportunity here, and that was the egg of the ancient wise beast. Every ancient wise beast was intelligent and had strong auxiliary abilities. At this place, Zicheng would buy an ancient wise beast egg that had been auctioned 36 times. Of course, these people in the auction house did not know that it was the egg of the ancient wise beast. If they had known, only a fool would have taken it out to auction. This ancient wise beast was very strange. Its auxiliary ability was the ability to foresee. Yes, the ancient wise beast's attack power was not strong. They would generally choose to attach themselves to a powerful mythological beast or to a human powerhouse. They would use their own ability to seek the protection of the powerhouse. Zicheng obtained the ancient wise beast egg at this place. Then, the ancient wise beast became her contract beast. From then on, she could see a part of the future and escaped several calamities. Foreseeing the future, even she was moved by such a powerful ability. Her goal this time was to rob Zicheng's so that she wouldn't be able to bid for the ancient Rue beast egg. Princess Eliza was next to her. Irene met her when she came to Jade Drop Island. This little princess was very kind-hearted. When she saw that Irene wanted to take a boat to Jade Drop Island alone, she let her on the boat. The two of them chatted and became good friends. Irene's team did not come together. This kind of exploration of the divine tomb was very dangerous. Their team leader did not dare to bring a few vegetables to explore such a dangerous divine tomb. After she handed in the mission together, she immediately rushed to Jade Drop Island with her fastest speed. She did not care about the danger. In any case, she could not let Zicheng obtain any benefits. Thinking of this world on the sea, Irene felt a headache. This place was simply made to give the female-led equipment. The demon-suppressing sword, the heart of water, and the ancient wise beast were all obtained in this world on the sea. Zicheng had cheated the people who lived on the sea. Those who were cheated clearly suffered so miserably, but they did not know who the real culprit was. Afterwards, they were deeply grateful to Zicheng and even made a statue for her. Just thinking about it made her drunk. Right, Zicheng would meet the male lead here. That male lead was not an ordinary person, but the young master of a super family. Moreover, he was engaged to this Princess Eliza. According to the development of the plot, Zicheng should have already met that genius young master in the Mirage. Moreover, the two of them admired each other. In the sea god's tomb, the two of them would meet for the first time in real life. From then on, the male lead would be dead set on her. The two of them would start to hook up, and Eliza would be the cannon fodder of their love. In the book, it was written that the female lead Zicheng did not know that the man she liked was engaged. It was not until Eliza heard about this that she found Zicheng and asked Zicheng to leave her fiancé. Only then did Zicheng know that she had unintentionally become a mistress. She was angry, hateful, and resentful. She promised to leave the male lead and never see him again. Later, when the male lead found out about this, he thought that Eliza had destroyed his relationship with Zicheng. He did not want to pay attention to Eliza anymore and even said that he wanted to break off the engagement. Chapter 341. At that time, the male lead was completely captivated by the female lead. He was willing to give up the whole world for her. Elisa didn't appear much in the original novel. It could only be seen that she was a very infatuated girl. She was willing to suffer all kinds of grievances for the person she loved. Elisa's mother couldn't bear to see her precious daughter endure such humiliation. She sent experts to kill Zicheng. Of course, they were also there to give experience to the female lead. In the end, the male lead's family and the Watercloud Nation fought fiercely. Both sides suffered heavy losses, but the male lead and the female lead were completely fine. The plot after that was simply godly. It was fine if she didn't mention it. Her most important thing now was to snatch the ancient Rue beast egg from the female lead. When the female lead bought it, the egg had been sold many times, so the price wasn't expensive. The female lead bought the egg at a very cheap price. With her here today, Zicheng took advantage of the situation. Irene? What are you thinking? I'm asking you a question. Elisa saw that her new friend seemed to be in a daze, so she pouted cutely. I still have a lot of gold coins on me. If it's not enough, I'll definitely look for you. Irene came back to her senses and smiled. That's good. If you don't have enough money, you must tell me. Elisa nodded and said with satisfaction. Irene sighed again in her heart. What a good girl. So pure, so cute, and so loyal. She really didn't understand how the male lead could be conquered by the female lead's beggar's chicken. That's right. When the male and female lead first met, the female lead treated the male lead to eat beggar's chicken. From then on, the male lead looked at the female lead in a new light. Was it because the chicken was too charming or because the female lead's cooking skills were too good? In another private room, a thin and weak man sat there. The man's appearance was somewhat ordinary. In the eyes of this era, he wasn't that handsome. However, the man's temperament was very good. He was clean and fresh. Coupled with his pure eyes, his temperament alone could instantly kill many men. Young master, eat some fruit. A round and cute little maid showed 8 snow-white teeth. She held a freshly cut fruit in her small hands and fed it to the young man. The young man gently used his hand to block the girl's feeding hand. Yuan Yuan, eat by yourself. The young man chuckled, his eyes gentle. Yes, young master. The little maid named Yuan Yuan didn't stand on ceremony at all. After answering happily, she put the fruit in her hand into her mouth. She ate happily and contentedly. The corner of the butler's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, young master pampered Yuan Yuan too much. Young master, there's still a while before the auction starts. Do you need to look at something else? The butler stood behind the young man and asked respectfully. This youth was called Shozo, and he was a direct descendant of the Blakeston family. The young man had a secret. He was a reincarnator from the future. One morning a month ago, Xiazhua was reborn with his memory of the future. He remembered everything that would happen in the future. Chazal had an elder brother named Caesar, who was the pride of the Blakeston family. Not only was Caesar handsome, but he was also extremely talented. The elders of the family asserted that Caesar was the one with the most hope of reaching the magic god realm in the family. In Xiaozua's eyes, Caesar was a lucky child born with a halo. Not only was he talented, but he was also engaged to the girl he had always been secretly in love with, Elisa. Because Xiaozua's body had been weak since he was young, he couldn't cultivate no matter if it was magic or fighting aura. Fortunately, he was open-minded. With the protection of his father and brother, no one dared to look down on him. He wasn't the kind of person who would go down a dead end. In Xiaozua's mind, as long as his family and the girl he liked could be happy, that would be the happiest thing for him. However, he didn't expect that his elder brother would personally kill the girl he loved so much, Elisa. His elder brother said that Elisa sent people to kill the woman he loved. How could that be? Elisa was a kind and pure girl. Even if his elder brother didn't love her, she would never send people to kill someone. Elisa's death made him heartbroken. His elder brother left the family for that woman. Since then, the Watermoon country and the Blackstone family became mortal enemies. The two families fought for more than half a year and both sides suffered losses. The family sent countless people to find his elder brother Caesar and give the Watermoon country an explanation. Unexpectedly, Caesar not only didn't come back, but also killed many of his uncles and brothers in order to protect that woman called Zicheng. He wanted to find his elder brother and ask him clearly, but there was nothing he could do. He could only watch his elder brother and the family turn against each other. Later, Caesar and that woman became famous. The two of them became like saviors. For a time, the limelight was unparalleled. Some people in the family wanted to find Caesar and let him lead the family to glory, but his father didn't agree. He still remembered his father saying that a person who could kill his own family for a woman was not qualified to be a member of the Blackstone family. No matter how high he went in the future, he would have nothing to do with the Blackstone family. He knew how heartbroken his father was at that time. Caesar had always been the pride of the family. He was his father's pride, but his elder brother did such a thing for a woman. He betrayed the family and killed Elisa. No matter what, it was unforgivable. Later, Caesar and that woman became magic gods and went to the divine realm. Less than 30 years after they left, the magic particles in the air became chaotic. People could no longer absorb any magic elements. If they tried to forcefully absorb them, they would explode and die. If this was a fatal blow to the human race, what happened next was simply sending people to hell. The water resources of the continent began to dry up. The green plants gradually withered and the land began to turn into desertification. Whether it was humans or magical beasts, their living conditions became worse and worse. The 5 elements' magic energy began to slowly disappear until it could no longer be felt. This process took less than 100 years. After that, spatial cracks began to appear in the space where people lived. As more and more spatial cracks appeared, the places where people could live became less and less. Although there was the protection of the Star Hall and the 4 great empires, it still couldn't change the living conditions of the human race. People investigated the reason for such changes in the heavenly wind continent. It was only later that they found out that the heart of the 5 elements on the continent had been taken away. Without the heart of the 5 elements, the magic particles of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire and earth would gradually disappear. The 5 elements would lose their balance and the land would turn into desertification. The appearance of the spatial cracks meant that this world had lost the heart of the 5 elements. The 5 elements were severed and the laws were incomplete. What awaited this world was destruction. Chapter 342. Where did the heart of the 5 elements go? Who took it away? They finally got the answer to this question from someone. It was a woman who had been on very good terms with Zicheng before he ascended. It was said that Zicheng had barged into her family alone for that woman and killed all those who had mistreated and bullied her. They all thought that this woman was on very good terms with Zicheng. They did not expect that she would stand up and accuse Zicheng at that time. That woman was called Nellie. At that time, Nellie was already a warlock saint. When she talked about Zicheng, her eyes were filled with hatred. He still remembered what Nellie said when he was by his father's side. "I don't know what's going on. Ever since I met her, I like to stay by her side more and more. I just wanted to be friends with her, but later on, I didn't even recognize myself. I couldn't refute anything she said. Once I refuted, I felt that I had committed an unforgivable sin. I only saw her in my eyes. It was as if she was my only family in this world, my only faith. Everyone else was no longer important. As long as it was for her, I was willing to do anything. When she killed my father and my family, I didn't even feel sad at all. I was only touched by her. All of this was too scary. Why did I become like that? That wasn't me. I loved my family, I loved my family. How could I betray my family and steal my family's sacred weapon for a friend? In the end, I even joined forces with outsiders to kill my family who had always loved me so much. Nellie's cries were simply heart-wrenching. The priests of the 4 empires checked her body, but they did not find any traces of her being tampered with. However, from Nellie's words, it was obvious that she had been controlled by something. In the end, she had become Zicheng's puppet. There was more than one person who said the same thing as Nellie. The men who had been infatuated with Zicheng had all woken up. Most of them were still alive and well. Thinking of their crazy infatuation with Zicheng, even when Zicheng left, they did not regret it. This was simply like a dream. Furthermore, the bunch of brainless things they had done for Zicheng made them wish they were dead. Later on, everyone confirmed that Zicheng indeed had the ability to turn those who liked her into puppets who would only listen to her. If it wasn't for the chaotic laws of the world and the impending destruction of the world, no one would have discovered her method of control and the people she controlled would not have regained their consciousness. From the mouths of these people, the truth had finally surfaced. It was Zicheng who had taken away the heart of 5 elements. It was she who had led this world to destruction. In an instant, the goddess who was praised by tens of thousands of people became the most vicious woman in the world. Her statue was personally destroyed by the angry people, and all the books that praised her were burned. Fortunately, there was always a way out. The masters of the 4 great empires, the 4 emperors of heaven, earth, sun, and moon, decided to use all their power to activate the secret treasure of the kingdom of the sky, the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time was an artifact that could only be activated by the descendants of God's blood. However, if the caster used the Wheel of Time to go back to the past, all his power would be sucked away and he would die. Moreover, the person who was sent back had to be an ordinary person because there was no longer any 5 elements magic in this world to replenish magic power. The more powerful the soul, the lower the success rate. Only the soul of an ordinary person could guarantee a 70% success rate. At this time, Shozo took the initiative to stand up and expressed his willingness to use the Wheel of Time to go back to the past and change history, even if the consequence of failure was the death of his soul. Going back to the past was not without danger. When passing through the time tunnel, one's soul would be torn apart by the power if he was not careful. Shozo had been an ordinary person for so many years. He lived under the protection of his family. Even the fact that he could live for so long was because his father had found a treasure that could prolong his life. He had enjoyed the care of his family since he was young, and now it was time for him to repay his family. At that time, there was indeed no one more suitable than Shozo. After all, he was Caesar's younger brother. Before Caesar left the family, their relationship had always been good. Before he came back, his father said that if Caesar was still obsessed with that woman, he should kill Caesar. He could not let him harm the family. As for the location where Zicheng obtained the Heart of 5 Elements, Shozo had already memorized all the locations through her former friends and suitors. Because there was no magic element, the 4 emperors used their bloodline power to activate the Wheel of Time. When the activation was successful, the 4 emperors were sucked dry and died, while he was sent into the time tunnel. In the process of passing through the time tunnel, his physical body was destroyed by the power of time. He despaired and thought that he had failed. In the end, he failed to live up to everyone's expectations. He did not expect that when he opened his eyes again, he had already returned. He had returned to the month before the tomb of the sea god opened. Everything was still not too late. He carried the future of people on his back. He had to stop all of this from happening. Zicheng did not know that her enemies had increased. There was already Irene who was eyeing her covetously, wanting to snatch her opportunity at any time. Now, there was a reincarnated person who came back from the Age of Chaos in the Heavenly Wind continent. He wondered what she would think when she found out about this. In the novel that Irene had read, it only mentioned that Zicheng had become a god. What happened after that was not written at all. Of course, she would not know that the Heart of 5 Elements was actually related to the survival of the entire continent. The Heart of 5 Elements was condensed from the 5 magic elements of this continent. Although it took a long time to condense the Heart of 5 Elements, it was not irreproducible. In order to condense another Heart of 5 Elements, there was a condition. That was that the previous Heart of 5 Elements had already perished. Although Zicheng had brought the Heart of 5 Elements away from this continent, the Heart of 5 Elements had not perished. As long as the previous Heart of 5 Elements was still there, the laws of the world would not be able to condense a new one. Therefore, Zicheng had brought the Heart of 5 Elements away, directly causing the Heavenly Wind continent to enter the Age of Chaos, gradually heading towards destruction. Irene did not know about any of this. She was currently busy snatching Zicheng's opportunity. Where was Zicheng? She had really come. Furthermore, she did not come alone. She came with Caesar. After Zicheng escaped from the evil hands of the demon general, she immediately went to look for her original team. Needless to say, she really found them. The others had already completed their mission. As Zicheng was usually a successful person, and Zicheng was swept away by the waves, they could not be blamed for being absent. Chapter 343. The rest of the team understood her and didn't blame her for not participating in the mission. Instead, they comforted her. Later, news of the opening of the tomb of the god of sin came. Zicheng and her friends naturally came to Falling Jade Island. However, the senior who led the team didn't want to join in the fun. Fortunately, the senior had a good impression of Zicheng. Zicheng tactfully expressed her desire to take a look, and the senior agreed to bring them to the tomb of the sea god. Zicheng didn't expect her to be so lucky to meet Caesar as soon as she got off the ship. She was very happy to see her friend. From the favorability rating, She could see that Caesar's favorability towards her had reached 80. As long as she worked hard, 100 favorability wouldn't be far away. Eve and Rika sat next to Zicheng. Zicheng naturally brought the two of them with her this time. Rika's favorability rating had been stuck at 90. This made her feel strange. Wasn't it too difficult to raise her favorability with Rika? In order to raise her favorability with Rika to 100, Zicheng took the initiative to bring Rika along. However, she didn't expect that before she could raise her favorability rating, she would fall into the water first. She was unlucky enough to fall into a pirate's lair. Caesar looked at the woman sitting next to him. Zicheng was kind and gentle, and also very strong. She didn't want to rely on a man, and only wanted to rely on her own efforts to win the respect of others. He admired this kind of hard-working woman. Zicheng, if there's something you like, buy it. Consider it a gift from me. Caesar's feelings for Zicheng hadn't reached the level of love yet, but his feelings for Zicheng weren't fake. He didn't think there was anything wrong with giving a gift to a girl he liked. On the other hand, Eve and Rika looked at the two with ambiguous gazes. Caesar was rich, powerful, and handsome. He was simply irresistible. They had long heard of Caesar's name. Caesar was a famous magic genius. Moreover, he was the young master of the Blakeston family. If there were no accidents, the future patriarch of the family would be Caesar. If Zicheng could marry Caesar, she would be a phoenix. They were naturally happy to see such a good thing happen. Eve and Rika were the daughters of small nobles, so they knew the difference between a normal noble family and a superfamily. There's no need. I won't accept a reward for nothing. Forgive me for not being able to accept your kindness. Zicheng bit his lips and said softly, "This is the first time we've met in real life. You helped me the first time we met. Consider this my gift to you," Caesar said, not allowing her to refuse. But that was just a small matter. I didn't want any gifts. Zicheng's purple eyes looked at Caesar seriously. She was telling him that she really meant it. Although Caesar was a little disappointed, he didn't want to force her to accept his gift. He could only let it go. At the same time, his impression of Zicheng rose again. At this time, Zicheng checked the favorability system. It turned out that Caesar's favorability towards her had risen by 5 points. Now it was 85. Zicheng was happy in her heart, but she didn't show any emotion on her face. At this time, there was a soft cry from outside the box. "Why is it this thing again? How many times has it been unsold? Why are you still taking it out?" The person who spoke was obviously not a first-time visitor to the Gu Yu auction house. He was a regular. "That's right. This thing has been unsold so many times. Why are you still taking it out? No one will sell it, okay?" The people below the stage who had seen it before all shouted. There were even people who said that they should just bid for the next item. Lu Shui didn't say anything and started to bid on the item in her hand. "The item in my hand is the 70th item of this auction. This is an unknown ore. This ore is very hard and no one has ever seen this type of ore before. Our auction house's refiners have spent a lot of effort but still couldn't melt this ore. From this, you can see how hard it is." Dong Shui talked a lot about the ore, but there weren't many people who were interested. Even if there were people who were interested, after hearing that this thing had been unsold dozens of times, they lost interest. "This item is an unknown ore. The starting price is 100 gold. The bidding starts now." Unfortunately, there weren't many people who were interested in this item. However, there were 2 people who were attending the auction for the first time who wanted to see what it was. They casually called out a price of 150 gold and 200 gold. 300 gold. Someone called out, 300 gold. Anyone else? 300 gold going once. Lu Shui called out with a smile on her face. 300 gold going twice. 400 gold. Someone made a bid again. This time, it was Zicheng. She didn't want to make a move so early, but that stone had an inexplicable attraction to her, as if it originally belonged to her. She didn't expect that the stone that made her feel special would almost belong to someone else while she was in a daze for a moment. 400 gold. Room 2 bids 400 gold. Is there anyone else? 500 gold. 600 gold. Zicheng didn't let go. 1,000 gold. Irene called out with a cold smile. She remembered that it was written in the book that Zicheng only spent 300 gold to get this ancient wise beast egg. With the help of the ancient wise beast, who knew how many opportunities he had. Now that she was involved, Zicheng wanted to buy this ancient wise beast egg with 300 gold. It was simply a dream. 1,200 gold. Zicheng frowned. He felt that this voice was very familiar. 1,500 gold. Irene continued to raise the price. 1,800 gold. The two of them went back and forth, and soon, the price was raised to 10,000 gold. The people in the other rooms began to pay attention to this unremarkable stone. Could it be that this stone was really a treasure? If it was, they couldn't let it fall into the hands of others. 12,000 gold. The person in box number 5 began to bid. 20,000 gold. Box 4 didn't fall behind. Irene and Zicheng were a bit confused. What were these people doing here? 100,000 gold. Suddenly, an elegant voice rang out. Third brother. Caesar was stunned. He didn't expect his third brother to be here. His third brother didn't like to go out. Why would he come to Falling Jade Island? It was too dangerous right now. Caesar was stunned by his brother's appearance. He then thought about the chaotic situation on Falling Jade Island and began to worry. It had to be said that before Caesar was completely captivated by Zicheng, he was still a good brother who cared about his younger brother. The person who made the bid was none other than Shozo. He didn't expect so many people to join in. Moreover, there was another woman competing with Zicheng. He clearly heard that when Zicheng obtained the ancient wise beast egg, no one competed with her. Chapter 344. The person who bid was none other than Xiazhua. Xiazhua hadn't expected so many people to join in. Moreover, there was another woman competing with Zicheng. He'd clearly heard that when Zicheng had obtained the ancient Rue beast egg, no one had competed with her. Xiazhua was a little confused. He didn't know if the person who told him this had remembered wrongly, or if he'd gone back in time and changed the development of the situation. No matter what, he couldn't let Zicheng obtain this ancient Rue beast egg. 120,000. Irene continued to bid. She hadn't expected that it would be so difficult to rob the female lead. When the female lead wanted to buy it, no one competed with her. Now that she'd joined in, there were so many people competing. Was this the difference in treatment between the female lead and the supporting female lead? Irene shook her head. She didn't care about the female lead or the supporting female lead. In short, she had to get this ancient Rue beast egg. This was one of the female lead's strongest cheats. 110,000. 120,000. 150,000. The people who joined in the bidding were all VIPs from the second floor. After Xiazhua joined in, 2 other rooms also bid. Later, Zicheng raised the price to 150,000. The guests in the rooms who'd originally only been curious about this unknown or thought for a few seconds and didn't join in the bidding. Although the guests in the rooms on the second floor were rich, their money didn't grow on trees. If they didn't have enough money, they could still buy this unknown ore and study it. Spending too much money on this useless thing wasn't like they had too much to eat. The guests in rooms 4 and 5 gave up on this round of bidding. Now, only Zicheng, Irene, and Xiazhua were left bidding. Senior Ming Shi, do you think there's something special about this lucky stone? Even the other rooms are bidding, Emogue asked curiously. He really didn't know what this egg-like stone was. The people in the rooms on the second floor had all seen good things before. If they were bidding, it must be something good. Ming Shi carefully looked at the stone-like object on the stage and shook his head. I can't see it either. Feng Wu heard a weak voice speaking. Save me, boo-hoo. Asterisk save me. What the hell is this place? Why are there so many people surrounding yours truly? Asterisk it was that rock. Fengwu's eyes widened. This was the first time she had heard stone speak, and she felt that it was very rare. Fengwu blinked and turned to tug at the corner of Ming Shi's shirt. What's wrong? Ming Shi felt someone pulling him. He turned around and saw the Fengwu girl. That, I want it. Fengwu said. Ming Shi was slightly taken aback, but he smiled and nodded, okay. It was just a rock. If Fengwu wanted it, Ming Shi naturally wouldn't refuse. As the prince of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom and the next Moon Emperor, Ming Shi wasn't someone who lacked money. One must know that he had the support of an entire country behind him. If you like it, I'll bid for it for you. Ming Shi stroked Fengwu's little head. It felt good to the touch as always. NN. Fengwu girl's eyes were smiling. 500,000. Ming Shi bid. The three people who had just raised the bid to 250,000 turned to look at the room where the voice came from. On the signboard beside the room, there was a large 0. Furthermore, the font was different from the other rooms. It was obvious that the person sitting in this room was of a higher status than the guests in the other rooms. Room 0 was opened. Xiazhua was stunned. He knew of the existence of Room 0. This room had always been reserved for auctions. No matter how tight the auctions were, the owner would never open this room for emergencies. This was because the people who could sit in this room had to be recognized by the Guyu auction house. Otherwise, no matter how much money you offered, you wouldn't be able to enter Room 0. Just who was it? Did this happen in his previous life? Even if Xiazhua racked his brains, he couldn't think of anything. Who asked him to be a shut-in his previous life? Because he knew he wasn't well liked, he rarely went out. Naturally, he didn't know much about the outside world. This time, when he transmigrated back, it was his father and Zi Cheng's original friends and suitors who told him all the big and small things about Zi Cheng that he found out. If they didn't tell him, even if he went back in time, he wouldn't be able to stop Zi Cheng from taking away the 5-element heart. Because of his shut-in nature, he didn't know where Zi Cheng got the 5-element heart. So the mysterious guest in Room 0, he didn't know if the same thing happened in his previous life, or if he was too shut in and didn't know. Or maybe it was because he went back in time and changed a lot of things, allowing someone to enter Room 0. Xiazhua couldn't figure it out, and neither could Erin. She was certain that in the original novel, no one had ever entered this Room 0. So who was the owner of this private room? Damn. Can't she just make a comeback? What happened to the comeback style? Zi Cheng didn't know what would happen in the future. Of course, she hadn't read the novel with her as the female lead, so she was curious about Room 0. Her attention was drawn to the ancient Ru-A beast egg. She wasn't in the mood to care about other people's business. The most important thing now was to get the egg. Just now, Zicheng specially used the system's scanning and identification function to check the attributes of the stone on the stage. She didn't expect it to be an ancient Ru-A beast egg. Ancient Ru-A beasts were known as the favored children of heaven and earth. They had wisdom that ordinary people couldn't match, and their lifespan was longer than other mythical beasts. Ancient Ru-A beast eggs had a kind of support skill given by heaven and earth. This skill was very powerful. Although they couldn't fight, they could rely on their support skills and superior wisdom to live better than other magical beasts. Zicheng was jealous of such a treasure. In her favorability system store, the price of the ancient Ru-A beast was enough to make people cry to death. That was a pet that was more awesome than a mythical beast. In fact, ancient Ru-A beast was also a member of the mythical beast family. Because they were different from ordinary mythical beasts, they were called Ru-A beasts. Ancient Ru-A beasts were rarer than those ordinary mythical beasts. Whether there were other Ru-A beasts in this world was still a mystery. After knowing the origin of the egg on the stage, Zicheng didn't intend to give up this ancient Ru-A beast egg. No matter what price she had to pay, she must get it. She felt that this egg existed because of her and was destined to belong to her. Chapter 345. Room 0, which no one had entered until now, had a bid. This was incredible, even the big families were shocked. There was no doubt that the people in the other boxes were all from aristocratic clans. However, Box 0 was a box that even people from large worlds like them, as well as the island master Luigi, did not have the right to enter. Who were the people in this box? Had they also come for the sea god's tomb? All of a sudden, everyone's thoughts started to wander. No one was paying attention to what was on the stage anymore. They were all guessing who the owner of Room 0 was. What kind of person had the face to make the Gu Auction House's Jade Drop Island branch owner, Claude, open Room 0 for him? Someone, go and find out who is sitting in Box 0. Go find out who's in Room 0. Go ask the people in the auction house, who's in Room 0. The owners of the various private rooms all took action and sent out their trusted aides to handle this matter. For a mysterious person whose name, surname, identity, and appearance were unknown, these aristocratic families naturally wanted their subordinates to figure out the other party's identity as soon as possible. No matter what these people were thinking, the auction continued. The ancient Rue beast egg had already reached a high price of 800,000 gold. None of the four parties were willing to let it go. The auction continued. 850,000. 900,000. 1 million. 1,100,000. The four people who were still participating in the auction were determined to get it. None of them were willing to give it up. Wow! What's going on today? This item that no one wants after dozens of bids is sold for 1 million gold. This is unbelievable. I'm wondering if I'm still asleep. I feel like I'm dreaming. These people are 2F** king rich. They spent more than 1 million to buy a useless piece of rock. We don't understand the world of the rich. Rich people. Spending 1 million gold on a useless stone. The people sitting in the hall on the first floor all looked at the rooms on the second floor with envy. Most of the people sitting on the first floor were adventurers or disciples of small or medium forces. Because their family background wasn't high enough, they could only sit in the hall and participate in the auction. They were envious of the people who could sit on the second floor. Now that these people were willing to spend 1 million gold on a useless piece of ore, they couldn't help but cry out. As for the people on the first floor, it was impossible for the people in the private rooms on the second floor to pay attention to them. They were not from the same world, so who would pay attention to them? That's too expensive, isn't it? A single stone costs more than 1 million. Margaret couldn't help but marvel. She used her spiritual power to test it and found that it was a piece of ore with extremely high hardness. Such a hard ore might really be a treasure. Unfortunately, an ore that couldn't be melted was useless to them. Unless they could find the heaven and earth divine fire, there might be a chance. However, it wasn't as if he was crazy to get a divine flame for a piece of ore. Unless he needed the ore to save his life, who would be so bored? It's already reached 1.5 million. Those three are really persistent. Senior Ming Shi increased the bid by 200,000, but they still followed. Mo Gue rubbed his chin, expressing that he didn't understand the world of the rich. Ming Shi increased the bid once more, and the price had already reached 2 million. 2 million gold wasn't a small amount, but to the people in the private rooms on the second floor, it wasn't a big amount. Zicheng and Irene were both wealthy people. Zicheng used modern knowledge to open many shops in ancient times, and even created many special delicacies. Now, there were many shops in the Heavenly Wind continent, and Zicheng naturally didn't lack money. As for Irene, in order to hide her identity, she didn't take the initiative to use modern knowledge to start her own business. However, she had a divine artifact like her life space. In Erin space, there were many rare elixirs that were hard to find in the world. In addition, she herself was a high-level pharmacist. If one were to ask what profession on the continent was the fastest way to earn money, it would naturally be the pharmacist. Since she had spirit medicines and was a pharmacist, Irene didn't lack money. As for Xia Zhua, he was a direct descendant of the Blakeston family. Although he didn't have much ability, due to his father's favor, he didn't lack money. Ming Shi, as the prince of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, had more money than the three of them. Therefore, the price of the ancient Roué beast egg was very high, and no one wanted to give it up. Claude, who was sitting in another room, frowned. He raised his hand to call the steward over, and whispered a few words. The steward immediately accepted the order and left. Not long after, a maid rushed onto the stage, ran to Lu Shui's side, and whispered in her ear. Lu Shui's smile froze, as if something unexpected had happened. After the maid passed the message, she left. Lu Shui coughed lightly, and an apologetic smile appeared on her face. My apologies, due to the owner of this auction item, due to personal reasons, this auction is not counted. Lu Shui, on behalf of the Gu Yu auction house, would like to express my deepest apologies to all of you. Lu Shui apologized with an apologetic smile. After Lu Shui finished speaking, the people below the stage and on the second floor exploded. What the hell? Taking back an item that's already on the stage? Is this a joke? Since when did the Gu Yu auction house have this rule? Are you kidding me? Do you think we don't know that this broken stone originally belonged to your Gu Yu auction house? The second floor box was also not calm. No one thought that Claude would do such a thing, and the excuse he found was so perfunctory. What auction item's owner wanted to take back the item? F*CK, do you think we don't know your Gu Yu auction house's rules? No matter what item is on the auction list, it can't be taken back, not to mention an item that's already on the stage. Your Gu Yu auction house found such an excuse. Aren't you bored? Do you think I'm a fool? At the same time, some people exclaimed. Looks like the person in box 0 is really powerful, or else Claude who eats people without spitting out their bones. How could he be willing to do such a thing? They thought that the ancient Roué beast egg was taken back because Ming Shi sent people to raise the price. In reality, Ming Shi and the rest were also in a state of confusion. They also didn't think that it could be played like this, so they actually raised the price for nothing. Ajur smiled knowingly. Don't worry, that stone will be sent to us soon. Ming Shi also thought of this point, and after frowning slightly, he relaxed his brows and didn't say anything. Chapter 346. A look of realization flashed across Matson's eyes. He understood as well. Riot and Mo Gue were already looking at the door, waiting for someone to deliver the goods. Sure enough, within 2 or 3 minutes, a beautiful maid stood at the door with a box in her arms. This is a gift from the boss for young Master Ming Shi. The boss said that young Master Ming Shi must accept it. The maid respectfully placed the box on the table. Seeing that Ming Shi didn't refuse, she let out a sigh of relief and walked out. Quick, see if it's that stone. As soon as the maid left, Mo Gue impatiently rushed to the table and opened the box immediately. Inside the beautifully wrapped wooden box was the ancient Roué beast egg. On the other hand, the people in the other 3 private rooms couldn't stay calm. From the moment they heard that the ancient Roué beast egg had been removed, the 3 of them were dumbfounded, especially Shozo. He was the one who couldn't believe it the most. He could swear that this had never happened in his previous life. In his previous life, the ancient Roué beast egg had landed in Zicheng's hands without a hitch. He didn't expect such a variable to happen in this life. For a moment, Shozo didn't know what to do. He was prepared to fight Zicheng to the end. No matter what, he wouldn't let her get the ancient Roué beast egg. In the end, he guessed the beginning, but not the ending. Zicheng and Irene's feelings were very complicated. Zicheng felt that something that originally belonged to her had left her. This made her heart ache, and her face turned pale. Caesar thought that she wasn't feeling well and personally poured a cup of tea for her. Eve hurriedly fed it to Zicheng. Zicheng took the tea and forced a smile. I'm fine. I just suddenly felt a little dizzy. Why don't we go back and rest? I'll go outside and find a doctor to take a look at you, Rika said with concern. No need. I'm fine. I'll be fine after some rest. Zicheng shook her head. She didn't want to go back now. Her feelings couldn't be wrong. She clearly felt that the ancient Roué beast egg was destined to belong to her. Why did it fall into someone else's hands? Who was it? Who robbed her of her opportunity? At this moment, Her heart ached terribly. It was as if someone had dug out a piece of flesh from her heart. This feeling was terrible. Are you still thinking about that, or? Why don't I go and find out who the owner of that or is? If that person is willing to sell it, then we can buy it directly from that owner. Caesar didn't know the significance of Box 0. He wasn't someone from this island, and the reason why he was here was because of the opening of the sea god's tomb. He didn't know anything about Box 0 in the Gu Yu auction house. If he knew the significance of Box 0, he would be able to guess the reason why Claude removed the items from the auction. Won't this be too troublesome for you? Although Zicheng knew that it wasn't good to trouble a friend she had only met a few times, that ancient Rue beast egg was very important to her. She felt that it was something very important to her. She must take back what belonged to her, so even if she knew it wasn't good, she could only agree. Of course, it was impossible for her to agree immediately. She still had to be reserved. No, I originally wanted to give you a gift. Since you like that or so much, then I'll definitely help you. Looking at Caesar's serious and domineering face, Zicheng's heart calmed down. It's okay, she still has hope. As long as she can find the seller, she can definitely get the ancient Rue beast egg back. What a pity, it was actually removed. Elisa felt very sorry for Irene. She could see that Irene liked that or very much, but there were too many people fighting for it. Later, it was inexplicably removed. Irene took a deep breath. The only thing she felt fortunate about now was that this ancient Rue beast egg didn't fall into the hands of the female lead. If the ancient Rue beast with the ability to predict appeared, she didn't know if she, a transmigrator, would be discovered. Elisa, can you find out where that or went? She still couldn't give up such a big golden finger. Elisa cutely tilted her head and blinked her innocent big eyes. Although I can't find out, but if I didn't guess wrong, that or must have appeared on the table in Box 0. Box 0. Irene was stunned. She didn't think that the so-called owner of the auction item withdrew the item for personal reasons. Sure enough, there are privileged classes everywhere. I hate privileged classes. Elisa, can you guess the identity of the person in the box? That voice was obviously changed. It wasn't the original voice at all. It seemed that the owner of Box 0 also wanted to hide his identity, so he changed his voice. I can't guess, but it shouldn't be someone from the nearby aristocratic families. They don't have so much face to be invited into Box 0. The most likely person is someone from the mainland. They might have come for the sea god's tomb. Elisa's answer made Irene a little disappointed, but she wouldn't give up like this. She would definitely find that person. No one except her knew how to hatch the ancient Rue beast egg. The ancient Rue beast egg was just a hard stone in the hands of others. It was useless at all. At that time, if she paid a high enough price, she would definitely be able to make the person who took away the ancient Rue beast egg sell it back to her. As long as it didn't fall into the hands of the female lead Zicheng, she wasn't afraid of falling into the hands of anyone. The auction downstairs was still continuing. There were constantly auction items being brought out, and each item sold for a good price. But so far, the aristocratic families on the second floor hadn't made a move yet. The things they wanted were still at the back. This is really a stone. Why do I feel like it's an egg? Margaret knocked on the eggshell. I think so too, but it shouldn't be a magical beast egg. How can a magical beast egg be so small? Ajur picked up the ancient Rue beast egg with one hand and checked it with his divine sense. He didn't detect any signs of life. How could the ancient moon auction house mistake an or with a magical beast egg? Stupid humans, with your strength, you want to find this young master? Dream on. Fengwu blinked doubtfully. She heard this voice again. It was a cute child's voice. It sounded so cute that it could melt people's hearts. This is an ore. I've never seen this kind of egg-shaped ore in books. Riot held the egg while thinking about what kind of ore it was. He thought about all the books about ores he had read before, but he still didn't have a clue. Why would Xiao Wu like this kind of stone? It's not fun at all. After looking at it, Margaret felt bored and brought her attention back to the auction. Chapter 347. At this moment, the auction was already 2/3 done. Most of the items had already been sold, and only a few items were still waiting to be auctioned. Those who were familiar with the process of the auction knew that the later the items were, the better the items would be. The truly rich and powerful people had yet to make their moves. The items at the beginning of the auction were just treasures that looked good in the eyes of the small and medium-sized clans. The real aristocratic clans wouldn't pay attention to them. The auction had finally reached the final stage. This time, a potion that increased affinity with magic elements was brought out. A person's magic cultivation speed was closely related to their affinity with elements. If one's affinity was high, they could absorb more magic elements, and their strength would grow much faster. On the other hand, if one's affinity with magic was low, then their cultivation speed would naturally be slow. The results of an hour of cultivation for others would be equivalent to 1 or 2 days of cultivation speed. Affinity was something that was innate. It was generally very difficult to change it. Even if there were potions that increased affinity, it wouldn't increase much. Moreover, every time a potion appeared, it would be sold at a sky-high price. Only the top aristocratic families could get their hands on it. The potion that appeared in this auction could increase elemental affinity by 2 levels on top of the original elemental affinity. It would be ineffective for geniuses with affinity over 90 points. After taking the potion, it could increase elemental affinity to 90 points at most. Therefore, even though it could only increase by 2 levels, if a person with affinity over 70 took it, they would immediately become elemental affinities. A person with affinity over 90 points would be able to reach that level. Therefore, even though it was only 2 levels and didn't sound like much, compared to those affinity-increasing potions that had appeared before, it was extremely effective. The effects of the potion were simply too heaven-defying. After Lu Shuer announced the effects of the affinity-increasing potion, whether it was the guests on the first floor or the VIPs on the second floor, their eyes were all fiery. Heavens! This is 2 levels of elemental affinity. This potion's effects are too heaven-defying. I don't know which master is so powerful to actually refine such a heaven-defying potion. With this potion, I suddenly have hope of becoming a magus. My son can be saved. As long as my son takes this potion, even Notre Dame du Starlight will be able to go. I must buy this potion. Miss Le Chouet, what are you waiting for? Quickly announce the starting price. Yes, quickly announce it. There was an uproar below the stage, but Le Chouet stood on the stage without any change in her expression. She still smiled gently and generously. Affinity increasing potion. The starting price is 100,000 gold coins. Each bid must not be lower than 10,000 gold coins. The auction begins now. As soon as Le Chouet's voice fell, a group of people impatiently began to shout out prices. I bid 110,000. You dare to call out 110,000? I'll pay 150,000. Get lost. It's only 150,000. I'll pay 200,000. Stop talking, I'll pay 200,000. 300,000. 350,000. 500,000. The bids were getting higher and higher, but none of the families on the second floor made a move. The aristocratic families on the second floor were all watching, waiting to see who would be the first to make a move. Irene smiled faintly as she watched everyone crazily selling her potions. She was delighted. This was not the first time she had sold her own potions, but it was the first time she had sold such a valuable potion. This affinity-increasing potion was an opportunity she had found in an ancient magician's tomb. Originally, this opportunity should have been obtained by Zicheng, but she was one step ahead of him and obtained the book that recorded many ancient potions. This ancient potion recipe was not very useful in the modern world, because many of the herbs that grew in abundance during ancient times had already become extinct. After Zicheng obtained it, he only sold it to the system store and obtained a pile of points. Rather than giving the ancient potion recipe to the female lead, Zicheng, for her to exchange for points, it was better to give it to her. In that ancient potion recipe book, there were many rare and amazing potion refining methods. Because Zicheng had the life space that could accelerate time with the golden life finger, In addition to some rare herbs that she had found with her prophet, she did not have to worry about the growth of herbs at all. This allowed her to have countless raw materials that she could use to practice. Finally, she succeeded in refining the affinity-increasing potion. Although this potion was powerful, it could only be used once, and the effects could not be stacked. When she was refining, she made more than 10 bottles. Anyway, this potion was no longer useful to her, so she might as well sell it for a good price. 1 million. Someone on the second floor finally made a move. 1,200,000. After that person, another VIP on the second floor made a bid. As soon as the person on the second floor made a bid, the first floor became quiet. No one dared to compete with these real aristocratic families. Besides, even if they wanted to compete, they could not. They were just some children of some small and medium-sized families, and some of the most ordinary adventurers. They did not have the money nor the power to compete with the VIPs on the second floor. Wow. That's 1 million. Irene, you are simply too amazing. Elisa looked at Irene with admiration, her eyes full of little stars. Irene smiled and did not say anything. The bidding between the VIPs on the second floor was much more intense. Every raise was in the tens of millions. This affinity-increasing potion sounds very powerful. It's a pity that it is too expensive. I can't afford it, Margaret said regretfully. Most of the people in Ming Shi's room were swordmasters. There were not many real magicians. Among the magicians, Ming Shi was a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. Moreover, his bloodline was strong enough, so he did not need to take potions to increase his affinity. Ajur, on the other hand, was the heir of the 4 god seals. His innate fire affinity was full. He also did not need this kind of potion to increase his affinity. The only magician left was Margaret. Although no one knew what her elemental affinity was, it could not be more than 80 points. Therefore, among this group of people, the only one who needed this kind of potion to increase affinity was Margaret. Margaret only regretted it in her mouth. She did not intend to ask Ming Shi and the others for help. Everyone was just temporarily together. The siblings and Ming Shi were just friends who had a better relationship than ordinary friends. This kind of relationship was not good enough to ask them to help get a potion worth 1 million. Ming Shi and the others were satisfied with Margaret's tactfulness. If she really asked, Ming Shi would also help her. However, it also proved that Margaret was not the kind of person to have a deep friendship with. The most taboo when making friends was to talk too much with a shallow friend. If you don't know your limits, you can make the friendship last. When everyone's attention was pulled to the stage, Fengwu had been holding the ancient Rue beast egg she had just obtained. Chapter 348. She knocked here and there curiously. This was the first time Fengwu heard a stone speak. She was very curious and had the desire to study it. What are you knocking for? Can't you let this baby rest? I'm talking about you, woman. Don't think that just because this baby likes your aura, you can do whatever you want to this baby. This baby is not a random mythological beast. A childish voice sounded in Fengwu's ears. That voice was very clear. The Fengwu girl's eyes lit up. She tried to communicate with the other party using her spiritual power, just like how she used to communicate with the flowers and trees. Who are you? The Fengwu girl's puzzled voice suddenly passed into the ears of a certain ancient wise beast that had just woken up. The little guy hiding in the egg moved his ears in disbelief. Impossible, this human could actually hear his voice. You can hear this baby speak. The ancient wise beast was shocked. Its big, watery, puppy-like eyes widened in disbelief. I can hear you, Fengwu said. Then she continued, Are you a stone? Why can a stone speak? This is the first time I've seen a stone that can speak. The Fengwu girl said excitedly. When the little guy hiding in the egg heard this, he exploded, You're the stone. Your whole family are stones. This baby is the most precious wise beast in the world. You actually dare to say that this baby is a stone. Woman with no eyesight. Wise beast. You're the legendary ancient wise beast. Fengwu was surprised and used her spiritual power to transmit her voice. Among the books she had read, there were some records about the ancient wise beast. Ancient wise beasts were also favored by the heavens. Although they had no fighting power, the heavens gave them a long life and powerful auxiliary abilities. The ancient wise beasts' abilities were divided into many kinds. Some had the ability to pierce through time, some could help people improve their bloodline and aptitude, and some had the ability to bring people back from the dead. There were also those that had the ability to know everything. Anything that had happened in the world, whether it was in ancient times, or now, as long as it had happened, there was nothing that it didn't know. Of course, it knew all the god-tier magic books, god-tier sword techniques, and ancient prescriptions that existed in history. It was like a living encyclopedia. In addition, there was also a type of wise beast that could predict things that had yet to happen in the future. As long as it wanted to, it could know what would happen in the future. There were many kinds of wise beasts' powers, but all of them could only play a supporting role. In the past, because humans were jealous of the wise beasts' powers, they had once rushed into the spiritual world to capture them. Although the magical beasts in the spiritual realm were not usually united, they had the same attitude towards the wise beast. Any human who had designs on the wise beast was the enemy of all the magical beasts in the spiritual realm. Humans were not the only ones who were interested in the wise beasts. Most of the humans were still relatively rational. Only a small number of people with extreme thoughts would want to rely on the wise beasts to reach the pinnacle of life. In addition to humans, there were also people from the Devil Realm, the Blood Clan, the Shura Clan, and other large and small races that were very interested in the wise beast. Obviously, it was just a mythological beast that did not even have any fighting power, but because of its extraordinary wisdom and incredible supporting abilities, it was called the wise beast. Moreover, they were clearly so weak, but they could get the love and protection of all the magical beasts in the spiritual realm. This made the other races feel very inconceivable. In any race, the strong were respected. Why did these wise beasts, who were clearly so weak, make the magical beasts willingly protect them? This matter was included in the top 10 unsolved mysteries. There were also rumors that the wise beasts might be related to the birth of magical beasts, so the magical beasts would protect them. Although there were countless rumors, no one knew what the truth was. Therefore, there was no record of the truth of this matter in the books. On the other hand, although those wise beasts were protected by all the magical beasts, holy beasts, and mythological beasts in the spiritual realm, they still could not escape the fate of being hunted in large numbers. Many wise beasts were directly killed because they refused to submit to other races. After so many years, the remaining wise beasts were rarely seen. They hid deeper for their own safety, and no one could find them. This was also the reason why Fengwu was so surprised by the little guy's identity as an ancient wise beast. Ancient? What year is this? The baby wise beast rolled its eyes, and its clever brain had already thought of many things. Fengwu said a person's time, and the baby wise beast was a little confused. It remembered that it had just returned to the initial state not long ago. How could thousands of years have passed? It's over. It's over. It's been more than 5,000 years. I don't know if little Momo and the others are still there. And my lovely Feifei and Lily, you must not marry other races. You must wait for me to go back. The wise beast expressed that it was very sad. When it thought of its lovely little green plums, it wanted to vomit blood in its heart. There weren't many beasts left in the wise beast clan. Marriage was a big problem. They couldn't marry other beasts like other beasts. This was the disadvantage of the wise beasts. They could only marry their own clansmen and have children. They couldn't think of mating with other clans. This was the restriction of the world's consciousness on their race. Although they had abilities that other beasts did not have, they were also prohibited from marrying other beasts. The world's consciousness did not want other races to inherit this ability from them. Once other beasts with powerful lethality had the ability of their wise beast race, they would dominate the spiritual world in minutes. How could the world's consciousness allow this kind of thing to happen beyond its control? How did you become a stone? Fengwu touched the white eggshell-like stone. She believed that no one would think that it was an eggshell. I didn't become a stone. I just returned to the state of a newborn. The baby wise beast was very depressed and spoke weakly. This Bao Bao was plotted against by a despicable devil. That despicable fellow, in order to capture this Bao Bao, actually used the devil's bead to make this Bao Bao turn into a devil for his own use. Wishful thinking. This Bao Bao is the greatest wise beast. How could I let him have his way so easily? When I was plotted against, I returned to the state of a newborn. As long as I hide behind this layer of mold, nothing can hurt me. The baby wise beast said proudly. It was very satisfied with the layer of treasure shell on its body. Can you come out now? Feng Wu asked. Hearing this question, the baby wise beast's voice became depressed. I can't come out. That guy used the demon bead to hurt me. There is already devil energy in my body. Unless the devil energy is completely eliminated, I can't come out. Chapter 349. As for when this demonic aura could be removed, it was unknown. Anyway, it was just a matter of time. The Rue beast had nothing but time. Remove the demonic aura? That's simple. What do you mean simple? Do you think this demonic aura is the demonic aura of an ordinary demon? This is the demonic aura of the king of the devil realm. How can it be removed so easily? Baby Rue beast rolled its eyes. The one who injured you is the king of the devil realm? Feng Wu asked. Yes, but he's at most a former devil king. Now those guys in the devil realm call him the devil ancestor. He's a sinister and cunning guy. He's too annoying. Rue beast rolled its eyes. Devil ancestor. Feng Wu girl expressed that she had heard of this name before. I'll help you remove the demonic aura later. Feng Wu girl liked this cute little thing, so she thought of using the pure sword's power to help baby Rue beast regain its freedom. I told you you can't do it. That's the power of the former devil king. You're just an ordinary human. How can you remove that power? Baby Rue beast said without any hope. Let me try. I can do it. Feng Wu girl said very seriously. Alright then, up to you. But can you not tell this Bao Bao's existence to others? There aren't many good people in the human race. They all want to capture this Bao Bao. If this Bao Bao's existence is revealed, it will be troublesome. Feng Wu thought for a moment and then nodded. Alright, I won't tell others. The human and Rue beast reached a consensus and then continued to talk through their spiritual power. They had no idea that the auction outside was coming to an end. Irene's affinity increasing potion was sold for a high price of 8.5 million gold coins. The one who bought this bottle of potion was Xia Zhua. Xia Zhua was holding the bottle happily. He was looking forward to the potion but was also puzzled. He was looking forward to its effect, but he was puzzled because he was sure that this potion had never appeared in his previous life. This was another unknown variable. No matter what this variable was, it was good for him anyway. It wasn't that Shouzo didn't have any talent at all. He did have a talent for magic, although it was just a weak water magic talent. Although he had talent, his affinity was too low, only 30 points. Without an affinity of 50 points, it was impossible to become a magician. With this bottle of affinity increasing potion, his elemental affinity could reach the minimum requirement to become a magician of 50 points. This way, he would have the hope of becoming a magician. Xia Zhua was very glad that he had brought enough money. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to compete with the other aristocratic families. Zicheng also saw the bottle of affinity growth potion, but that potion had no effect on her. She had the affinity system in her hands. As long as she wanted, she could exchange for the same type of potion at any time. Therefore, Zicheng wasn't very interested in this bottle of potion. Eve and Rika, on the other hand, were very interested in this bottle of affinity growth potion. They even participated in the auction. However, the two of them weren't from any powerful families, so they didn't have enough money to compete with those aristocratic families. Zicheng was willing to sponsor the two of them, but when Xia Zhua also joined the auction, Caesar remembered that this potion was exactly what his younger brother needed. He immediately stopped Eve and Rika from participating in this auction. Although the two girls were unwilling, they didn't dare to not give face to Caesar. Caesar was a real young master of a powerful family. The two of them couldn't afford to offend him. As for Zicheng, he was also happy to give face to Caesar. He even persuaded Eve and Rika to withdraw from this auction. Zicheng's righteousness immediately won Caesar's favor. The two's affinity increased by 3 points. This was good news for Zicheng. Caesar was originally worried that his younger brother wouldn't be able to successfully bid for this potion. He was very worried that his younger brother didn't have enough money on him. He had already thought it through. If his younger brother didn't have enough money in the end, he would bid for the potion himself. Fortunately, Xiazhua had brought enough money and successfully won the bid for the potion. This is the last item of this auction. This is the final item of this auction, the key of the sea god. Following Lu Shui's excited announcement, an exquisite jade box containing a golden key appeared on the stage. Inside the jade box was a key with golden light flowing around it. It looked gorgeous and mysterious. Coupled with its name, it immediately attracted the attention of everyone upstairs and downstairs. Everyone's breathing seemed to stop for a moment. I believe all of you know that not long ago, a tomb of the sea god appeared not far from our falling jade island. The tomb is the final resting place of the sea god. There are countless treasures inside. My father once wanted to open the tomb, but unfortunately, he was unable to do so because he lacked 2 of the keys. A total of 3 keys are needed to open the tomb. Without all 3 keys, no one can open the tomb. The item being auctioned now is one of the 3 keys needed to open the tomb. Most of the guests on the second floor were here for this key. They all wanted to obtain a key so that they could seize the opportunity when the tomb was opened and obtain more benefits. If it weren't for the fact that these people were afraid of not having enough money, Xiazhua wouldn't have been able to obtain the potion so easily. The potion was gone. The key of the sea god, the starting price is 1 million gold coins. Each bid must not be less than 10,000 gold coins. 1,100,000. 1,500,000. 5 million. One of the private rooms on the second floor directly raised the price to 5 million. The small losers on the first floor all gave up. They didn't have so much money to compete with the local tycoons. Even if they were lucky enough to win the competition, they might be killed and robbed to make a wedding dress for others. As long as they weren't stupid, no one would want to compete for the key of the sea god in front of these nobles. So what if it was the key to opening the tomb? It couldn't be more important than their own lives. 10 million. This person was even more ruthless, directly raising the price to 10 million. 13 million. 15 million. 20 million. 30 million. 50 million. From a 100% increase at the start to 10 million now, the efficiency couldn't be any higher. Xiazhua knew that the key would eventually fall into his brother's hands, so he didn't plan on interfering. Irene also knew the outcome of this auction. She didn't plan on competing with the male lead so early. That key is exactly the same as the one we got on Death Island, Ajur said. It's the key of the sea god, of course it's the same. Emogue shrugged nonchalantly. Chapter 350. The price quickly rose to 100 million. For a place like the sea god's tomb, which was the tomb of an innate god, everyone wanted to find treasures inside, especially the sea god's godhood. The godhead of the innate god was a true treasure. As long as one obtained the godhead of the sea god, not only would they have the hope of becoming a god, but they would also obtain the power of the sea god. This was an ability that the postnatal god's godhead didn't have. In the maritime kingdom, there was no lack of water mages. Wasn't the ultimate goal of water mages to become a water mage god? Wind had the opportunity to become the sea god. No matter how dangerous the innate god's tomb was, it was believed that a large number of people would want to enter. And the person who obtained the sea god's key would definitely have an advantage in the sea god's tomb. The 3 sea god's keys were said to be the weapons of the sea god. They possessed unimaginable power. Therefore, the person who obtained the keys would not only obtain the qualification to enter the sea god's tomb earlier than others, but also a powerful sacred tool. Ming Shi and the others had experienced the power of the sea god's key. They had suffered a great loss from the sea god's key. If they hadn't succeeded in finding out the truth, they might not have been able to leave Death Island. If the other 2 keys had the same ability, they would be worth the price. 200 million. Caesar increased the price again. The Blakeston family would never give up on the sea god's key. Caesar had come to the maritime world this time for the sea god's tomb. The 3 sea god's keys were also treasures that his family was determined to obtain. Legend had it that collecting all 3 keys would allow one to obtain the sea god's sacred tool, the sea god's scepter. If a family possessed a sacred tool, even if they couldn't reach the heights of the 4 great empires, they would still become one of the top few families. The reason why the Blakeston family was ranked 7th among the 10 great families was because they didn't have a sacred tool. As long as he could obtain one of the 3 keys, he didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to obtain the other 2 keys after spending some time. Thinking about the legend of the 3 keys, Caesar's heart was not without worry. Ever since the sea god fell during the great war of gods and demons, the 3 keys had never been found at the same time. 2 of the 3 keys had been wandering the world, and had been possessed by many masters, but no one had ever found the 3rd key. The 3rd key, which had yet to appear, was what worried Caesar the most. However, even if he could not find the 3rd key, the sea god's key was still a rare sacred artifact. Obtaining it would not be a loss. No one would have thought that the 3rd key would be in an ordinary mortal village. If Yanemo and the others hadn't heard about the key by chance and harbored evil intentions, who knew how long the 3rd key would have stayed in that small village? 500 million. Another private room called out, and this time, he increased the bid by 100 million. The aristocratic families on the 2nd floor began to bid one after another. Only the mysterious Box 0 and Box 0 did not make a move. No one could guess whether the people in these 2 boxes did not want to participate in this auction at all, or whether they wanted to make a move at the end. At this moment, an extraordinarily handsome middle-aged man was sitting in Box 0 with a smile on his face. He was watching the intense bidding outside while eating some snacks. Next to the man was a beautiful woman. She looked to be about the same age as Lu Shui, and there was a trace of arrogance in her expression. Every movement she made was filled with confidence. "Father, why don't we bid for the key? If we can get it, our family will have 2 keys. If we can find the 3rd one, it'll be a sacred artifact." Lu Fei said with some disappointment. "Fei, do you remember what I told you and your brother? There are some things you can do, and some things you can't do." The man was the first island master of Jade Drop Island, Luwuji. Jade Drop Island was made up of 12 islands of different sizes. Luwuji was in charge of the largest island, while the other 11 islands were divided among the other 11 island masters. Luwuji was very close to the other 11 island masters. The 12 of them were sworn brothers, and had been part of a mercenary group together in the past. They had made quite a name for themselves. If it weren't for their deep friendship, how could they have worked together to establish Falling Jade Island? "Father, are you saying that we can't bid for the Neptune's key? But why is that?" Lu Fei blinked, not quite understanding. Who knows how many great families and superfamilies have their eyes on the Neptune's key? There's no room for anyone else to interfere. If we overestimate ourselves and try to get the key, I'm afraid our family and your uncles won't be able to keep their lives. No matter where you were, the strong were respected. If you wanted to live long, you had to know what you could and couldn't do. If you didn't have a sense of propriety, you could only blame yourself if you died. It's that serious? Lu Fei's heart trembled. Lu Fei had never doubted her father. Her father, Lu Wuji, was a truly intelligent man. All these years, Jade Drop Island had flourished, and no one had dared to try to get their hands on it. Lu Wuji's intellect was recognized by everyone. Then the Neptune's key in our hands. Lu Fei was a little worried. She hadn't thought about it before, but after knowing that the Neptune's key would bring trouble to their family, the child immediately gave up on the Neptune's key. Lu Wuji shook his head. "Don't worry. At the very least, no one will try to get their hands on Jade Drop Island for now. Luigi already had a plan in mind. He wasn't worried that someone would try to get their hands on the 12 islands just because of the Neptune's key. The conversation between Luigi and his daughter wasn't heard by outsiders. Under Lu Shui's control, the Neptune's key had already reached a high price of 1 billion. Only when the price reached 1 billion did the bidding slow down. No one raised the price by 100 million, but at the very least, they raised it by 1 million. Finally, after a new round of bidding, the Neptune key was purchased by Caesar at a price of 1.57 billion gold coins. This price was already higher than the price of an ordinary saint artifact. In the past, the highest price for a saint artifact was 1 billion. 1.5 billion this time was already a very high price. If it weren't for the fact that the Neptune's key wasn't just a saint artifact, but also the key to open the Neptune's tomb. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many conditions, Caesar wouldn't have bought the Neptune's key at a price that was several hundred million more than an ordinary saint artifact. After the Neptune's key was sold, the auction came to an end. People began to leave one after another. Chapter 351. Everyone in the box had a special exit passage, so they didn't need to squeeze with others. After the auction ended, Ming Shi and the others didn't stay long. They took the packed snacks and Feng Wu's new ancient Rue beast and happily walked through the VIP passage. As soon as they walked out of the passage, they found that some people were looking at them. Some people even came up directly to give Ming Shi and the others an invitation to their house. Ming Shi just smiled and didn't say whether he would go or not. For these social activities, Ming Shi and the others had no interest at all. These people who went to Ming Shi were the butlers and servants of the major families. They all wanted to know who was sitting in the mysterious zero box, and they all had the intention of winning over them. However, these people from the major families were very arrogant. They wouldn't stand there and block people in person. For them, sending the family's butlers was already a very good thing. After all, the people who usually sent invitations were only ordinary servants. Only those with the same status could send the family's butlers in person. However, all of this had nothing to do with Ming Shi. They didn't plan to go to any of the appointments. Feng Wu walked next to Ming Shi with the new ancient Rue beast in her arms. From time to time, she used her spiritual force to communicate with the baby Rue beast. The two of them communicated happily. Feng Wu was a child who had a lot of affinity with animals since she was a child. Although the baby Rue beast didn't say it, it could still be found that it liked Feng Wu very much. Not far from Ming Shi and the others, Zicheng, Eve, and Rika quietly watched the scene of Feng Wu coming out with the Rue beast egg. Eve had always disliked Feng Wu. Seeing that she had snatched the ancient Rue beast, that Zicheng liked very much, she was very upset. Her first reaction was to rush over and ask Feng Wu to obediently return the Rue beast egg to Zicheng. In her mind, as long as Zicheng wanted it, it was Zicheng's. No matter who it was, they should give the things that Zicheng liked. Otherwise, it would be a heinous crime with a vicious heart. If it wasn't for Zicheng who pulled her back, she would have already rushed forward by now. In another corner, Irene and Elisa were also quietly watching Ming Shi and the others. Irene really didn't expect to meet Ming Shi and the others here. Although Ming Shi and the others were also traveling on the sea, Irene didn't know the exact location. Most of her attention was focused on Zicheng's situation. So they want that or? If you like it, you can go and buy it from them. Elisa saw Irene with her head lowered in contemplation and thought that she wanted the ore, so she helped her. Elisa. Xiaozhu didn't expect to see Elisa here. His mind was filled with thoughts. In his previous life, Elisa was killed by her fiancé, his own brother. In this life, he must protect Elisa and not let her end up in the same miserable state as in her previous life. Xiaozhu. Elisa heard the sound and turned around. When she saw Xiaozhu, she was stunned, her mouth wide open. As far as she knew, Xiaozhu rarely left his home, let alone traveled far. How could she not be surprised to see him on Jade Fall Island? Elisa, Long time no see. How have you been? Suppressing his excitement, Xiazhua tried his best not to appear too different from usual. Elisa winked playfully. Long time no see? We clearly saw each other 2 months ago. Don't tell me you've forgotten that we've met before. With that, Elisa pouted her lips in dissatisfaction. And this is? Xiazhua didn't answer Elisa's question. Instead, he looked at Irene. He didn't notice before, but now that he was closer, he realized that there was something wrong with this girl. First of all, he was very sure that this girl had never appeared by Elisa's side in her previous life. Secondly, he sensed a familiar energy fluctuation from the girl's body. Only souls that had passed through the time tunnel would be tainted with this energy. Did this girl also come back from the future? Xiazhua's mind flashed with all kinds of guesses, but he didn't show it on his face. His expression was calm and his eyes were gentle. This is my new friend, Irene. Irene, this is my childhood sweetheart and my fiancé's younger brother, Xiazhua. Elisa introduced the two to each other. Hello, Xiazhua. Irene greeted Xiazhua naturally and gracefully. Xiazhua warmly returned the greeting. Hello, Miss Irene. Irene tried hard to recall who this Xiazhua was. Her fiancé's younger brother? Wasn't that the male lead's younger brother? The male lead's younger brother. Ah. She remembered that the male lead had a useless younger brother. That younger brother was both magic and dookie trash since he was young. Back then, the female lead and the male lead encountered the Heart of Water together. The Heart of Water had the ability to nourish the body, and Xiazhua had some talent as a water magician. Although his talent was very low, as long as he had the Heart of Water, his body would definitely improve. Although the female lead had a good impression of the male lead, the Heart of Water was a treasure. How could she give it away for someone she hadn't even met before? Later on, the female lead told the male lead that the Heart of Water was very useful to her, and she couldn't give it to the male lead's younger brother. The male lead didn't give up and kept persuading the female lead. Later on, the female lead saved the male lead again. From then on, the male lead didn't mention anything about asking for the Heart of Water for his younger brother. He only cared about being lovey-dovey with the female lead. Xiazhua's only appearance in the novel was after Elisa's death. The one who was most upset about Elisa's death was Xiazhua. In the novel, it was written that Xiazhua sent flowers to Elisa's grave and said that he hoped to be a man worthy of Elisa in his next life. After that, Xiazhua didn't appear again. He didn't appear again until the male and female lead ascended to the heavenly realm. He was simply a passerby. However, thinking of Xiazhua's infatuation, it wasn't a bad thing for Elisa to accept Xiazhua. At least she wouldn't have to step into the male lead's pit. Elisa didn't know what her two friends were thinking. She was very happy to see Xiazhua here. She took them to eat, completely forgetting about the roux beast egg. The three of them went to a hotel and asked for a quiet private room. The three of them ordered a table of delicious food and opened 2 bottles of red wine. They ate and talked. I don't know where Big Brother Caesar is right now. I clearly heard his voice just now. I wanted to wait for him at the exit, but I didn't expect that after waiting for so long, he had already left. Elisa complained with a pout. He didn't call me to the auction house. He clearly knew that I was at Falling Jade Island, but he didn't come to see me. No matter what, we are still engaged. He doesn't take me seriously. Chapter 352. Despicable Smelly Caesar. Smelly Caesar. He clearly knows that I'm looking for him, but he doesn't show up. Does he still have me, his fiancée, in his heart? Only Elisa could be heard talking in the entire room. Elisa's alcohol tolerance wasn't good, but she insisted on drinking. Once she was drunk, she would spout nonsense. Moreover, everything she said was related to Caesar. The two people who knew Elisa's future very well sighed in their hearts at the same time. Elisa was cute and infatuated, but the heavens gave her such a sad ending. She died in the hands of the person she loved the most. As Elisa spoke, she collapsed on the table and fell into a deep sleep. It seemed that she had finally passed out from being drunk. Elisa. Irene patted her shoulder helplessly, but her hand was waved away by this little drunkard. The little drunkard turned her head and continued to sleep. Who are you? What's your purpose in getting close to Elisa? At this moment, Shozo's voice sounded in the empty room. However, his voice wasn't as gentle as usual. Instead, it had a trace of coldness. Irene was stunned. She didn't expect Shozo to suddenly ask such a question. I'm a student of the Notre Dame du Starlight. I don't have any purpose in getting close to Elisa. Elisa is a simple and cute girl. I sincerely treat her as a friend. Although Irene felt that the young man in front of her had become unfathomable, she still answered this question. In Irene's mind, she just thought that these young ladies and young masters of big families wouldn't easily trust others. He thought that she approached Elisa with the purpose of using her. She wouldn't lose anything by explaining. Regardless of whether he believed her or not, she had already explained it. It was up to him whether he believed her or not. You have the residual power of the time tunnel in your body. I'm very sure that there has never been a friend called Irene by Elisa's side. What's your purpose in getting close to Elisa? Shozo went straight to the point. Shozo didn't dare to be careless when it came to Elisa. As long as the other party revealed a little bit of malice, he would immediately kill this woman called Irene to prevent this woman from doing anything bad to Elisa. Although he was just an ordinary person, Yuan and the housekeeper had been waiting outside for a long time. As long as he called them with his mind, they would immediately rush in and kill this woman called Irene. Irene's eyes widened. This was the first time someone could see through her so easily. Was this man really the good-for-nothing young master in the original novel? Based on her understanding of this world, the people in this world would not deviate from their original personalities. Even if the trajectory of fate changed, their personalities would never change. On the other hand, Xiaozuo's personality was clearly too different from the novel. Did someone transmigrate into Shozo's body? Could it be another guy from another world? Irene felt a headache coming on. If the other party was really a transmigrator, then it would be troublesome. Everyone knew that before transmigrating, there was no touching scene of a fellow transmigrator meeting a fellow transmigrator. As fellow transmigrators, meeting a fellow transmigrator was like a battle between two tigers. One of them was bound to be injured. She hadn't turned the tables on the female lead yet, so she didn't want to go up against this transmigrator first. The Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger. Regardless of whether he was a transmigrator or not, she would know after trying. What did you say? Xiaozuo frowned. What did this mean? You don't understand? Then it wasn't transmigration. Could it be? You're reborn, right? Erin was shocked, very shocked. She never dreamed that this world already had two transmigrators, her and the female lead, and now there was a reincarnated person. World's consciousness, what are you trying to do? Come out and let's talk about life. What's rebirth? Xiaozuo asked in confusion. What was wrong with this woman? Why did she always say things that he didn't understand? Could it be that she wanted him to lower his guard, you're thinking too much, and wait for an opportunity to strike? It's going back to the past from the future. Did you die in the future? Did you come back to take revenge? Irene was quite curious about the reborn man since it was her first time meeting him. If transmigrators met, only one of them could survive. However, if they met a reborn person, that was not necessarily the case. Didn't you see that the main characters in those rebirth novels all had a clear goal after they were reborn? If it wasn't for revenge, then it was to lead their family out of poverty and become rich. For Xiaozuo, the second goal was definitely not applicable. That was revenge. Didn't you see that 9 out of 10 reborn people did it to take revenge on the main character? However, she still couldn't figure it out. Before the male and female lead left, Xiaozuo's family was still alive and well. So how did Xiaozuo get reborn? In the end, his family was implicated by the male lead and was pulled down from their position as a super family. However, after the rise of the male lead, they didn't rush to hug his thigh. Just based on this point, Irene had a good impression of Xiaozuo and his family. Going back to the past from the future was quite similar to the description of rebirth, right? He seemed to be the reborn person she was talking about. Answer my question first. Who are you? Why do you have the energy of the time tunnel? Xiazhua didn't intend to let her ask any more questions. Well, I'm about the same as you. However, I can't do that. Tell me first, did you come back for your brother and Zicheng? Irene asked. If they had the same goal, they could work together. Irene silently thought. You know that too. Xiazhua didn't expect this woman named Irene to know so much about him. She even knew that he came back for Zicheng and his brother. It seems like our enemy is the same. If that's the case, let's work together. Irene said directly. Work together? What qualifications do you have to work together with me? Why should I believe you? Xiazhua came from a super family. How could he trust others so easily? Moreover, he didn't think that there was a need for him to work together with Irene. Although this Irene was a little mysterious, her strength wasn't very high. She didn't seem to be from a famous family either. She couldn't help him much. This so-called cooperation was only possible when both sides had similar strength. Although he was just an ordinary person, the power behind him was more than 10 Irenes. It was no wonder that Xiazhua didn't want to work with Irene. To show my sincerity, I can tell you some things about myself and Zicheng. Irene then told him about her original world and how Zicheng was also a transmigrator. You're saying that you and Zicheng aren't from Heavenly Wind Continent. You've transmigrated from another world. And Zicheng is the son of fate of this world. He's protected by the world's consciousness. This was the first time Xiazhua heard of this. Even Zicheng's friends and admirers didn't tell him this. Perhaps even they didn't know that Zicheng wasn't from Heavenly Wind Continent. Chapter 353. Jadefall Island Master Luwuji's Mansion. Father, I'm back. Lu Shui walked into the main hall with graceful steps. Luwuji was sitting in the main hall talking to his eldest daughter, Lu Xian. When he saw his eldest daughter walk in, a smile appeared on his face. You're back, sister. How does it feel to be an auctioneer for the first time? Lu Fei had seen her sister's awe-inspiring appearance on the stage today. She wanted to try out the feeling of being an auctioneer next time. What can I feel? It's just the same. Lu Shui smiled faintly and said indifferently. Shui, are you tired? If you're tired, go rest first. Luwuji was still very concerned about his daughter. An auction would take a few hours, and most people would definitely be tired to death. I'm fine, I'm not very tired. That's right, where's Big Brother? Why isn't he back yet? Lu Shui looked around. Apart from a few servants, there was no one else. Your big brother is preparing to enter the sea god's tomb. He'll be back later. Luwuji said. Father, when are you going to open the sea god's tomb? Didn't you say that there's still a key? Can we open the tomb without a key? Lu Shui gritted her teeth and said worriedly. Luwuji picked up his teacup and slowly took a sip of the fragrant tea. The third key has appeared a long time ago. I can sense that the owner of the key has already brought it to Jadefall Island. When the divine tomb opens, that person will definitely appear. The person was already here. The two sisters were stunned. They didn't expect that the third key they had been looking for so long had already been brought to Jadefall Island. Then when are we going to open the tomb? Lu Fei immediately asked impatiently. Lu Fei had long been curious about the sea god's tomb. This time, no matter what, she had to get a spot to enter. In 3 days, young Master Caesar and I will go together. The owner of the third key will definitely go. When the time comes, you two sisters will stay at home obediently. Don't even think about following us secretly. Luwuji knew his daughter very well. Lu Shui was sensible and obedient, but Lu Fei was a little headstrong. If he didn't keep her under control, no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be any accidents. Lu Fei pouted. She was unhappy with her father's decision. She made up her mind that when the day came, she would definitely secretly follow them. Wherever she, Lu Fei, wanted to go, she didn't believe that anyone could stop her. Lu Shui sighed in her heart. It seemed that her younger sister was up to something again. She had better keep a close eye on Lu Fei for the next few days. She couldn't let this girl enter the sea god's tomb and cause trouble for her father and brother. On the same day, news of Lu Wuji leading a group of people to the sea god's tomb spread throughout Jade Drop Island. Of course, Ming Shi and the others were also discussing this matter in the hotel where they were staying. Have you heard? The sea god's tomb will officially open in 3 days. I also heard about it. Didn't they say that the restriction outside the Divine Mausoleum is so strong that even Island Lord Lu can't break it? Could it be that we've finally found a formation master who can break the restriction? What? I heard that the key to the tomb of the god of sin has been found. The man who spoke revealed the latest news he had heard with a smug look. What key? This person was clearly not well informed. You don't know? My brother's best friend's younger sister's best friend just so happens to work at the Gu Yu auction house. Yesterday, the Gu Yu auction house's last auction item was the key to the sea god's tomb. Someone is willing to take out the key to the sea god's tomb for auction? Is that person crazy? If it were me, I would definitely hide the key well and take all the treasures in the sea god's tomb for myself. I say, brother, your thinking is too simple. If you want to open the sea god's tomb, you need 3 keys. You want to take the sea god's tomb for yourself with just 1 key? Dream on. So it's like that. There are actually 3 keys. Island Lord Lu said that the sea god's tomb will open in 3 days. Does that mean that all 3 keys have been gathered? How would I know? It should be. Otherwise, why would Island Lord Lu say that the sea god's tomb will open in 3 days? This was the news that Ming Shi and the others heard when they came down to eat. After the waiter brought the food to their rooms, Ming Shi and the others sat at the table and ate while discussing the news of the god's tomb opening in 3 days. Senior Ming Shi, do you think that Island Lord Lu knows where the keys are? Otherwise, why would he directly say that the god's tomb will open in 3 days? Mo Gue said suspiciously. Everyone thought about it and agreed. If he didn't know where the keys were, what if the 3 keys weren't gathered in 3 days? Wouldn't that be a joke? I think so too. I've been feeling like someone has been watching us for the past 2 days. It's definitely not my imagination. It seems like we've been watched the moment we entered Jade Drop Island. Ajur said as he swallowed the meat in his mouth. The people watching us must know that Senior Ming Shi has the keys. The only people who know about this are those who were swept into Death Island with us. Riot said. Those people have been watching us for so many days. Could it be that they want to steal the keys? Margaret said. I don't think so. If they really wanted to steal them, they would have done so long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. Matson disagreed. Fengwu looked around with her large eyes. Seeing that everyone was talking, she didn't interrupt. She opened her small mouth and ate a mouthful of roast chicken, a mouthful of meatball soup, and a croissant. She ate happily. Next to Fengwu, Little White was holding Little Yi and feeding him egg custard. Little Yi ate the steamed buns happily, occasionally reaching out to grab the food on the table. His little mouth was even drooling. He already displayed the characteristics of a foodie at such a young age. Ming Shi and the others discussed for a long time, actually, it was just idle chatter, before deciding to go take a look. The sea god's tomb would open sooner or later. Since it had to open, they couldn't avoid it even if they wanted to. In addition, Ming Shi discovered a function of the key. It could actually sense the other 2 keys. As long as it wasn't too far away, it could roughly sense the location of the other key. He could now sense that the other 2 keys were on Jade Drop Island. He believed that the other 2 who held the keys could sense this as well. He believed that if he didn't appear when the time came, the other 2 would use the key's sensing ability to find him and force him to hand it over. Although Ming Shi wasn't afraid of anyone, he didn't want to cause trouble. Therefore, he had to go when the tomb opened in 3 days. Those 3 days were the busiest in Jade Drop Island. Everyone was discussing the opening of the tomb, and the number of people discussing it was increasing. Many people from other factions kept flooding into Jade Drop Island for the sake of the opening of the tomb. Chapter 354. All the inns on Falling Jade Island were fully booked, regardless of whether they were big hotels or small inns. Some of the smarter natives of the island even rented 1 or 2 rooms to the adventurers who came to explore the tomb of the god of sin at the same price as the rooms in the inns. The aboriginals, on the other hand, made a small profit, which made the ordinary fisherman smile from ear to ear. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, and it was soon the day of the god of sin's tomb's opening. Early in the morning, the tomb of the god of sin's tomb was already packed with people. These people were all here for the treasures in the tomb of the god of sin. They all wanted to be the first to rush in and grab the treasures when the tomb of the god of sin opened. Luigi came early, but there were already many people outside the tomb of the god of sin's tomb by the time he arrived. He didn't bring many people with him this time, but they were all experts. The 12 island masters didn't all go into the tomb of the god of sin. Everyone knew that although the tomb of the god of sin was full of opportunities, it was also extremely dangerous. If the 12 of them were unlucky and died inside, what would happen to Falling Jade Island? Therefore, the 12 island masters had already discussed that when the tomb of the god of sin opened, they would send 4 of their brothers in, while the other 8 would stay outside to guard against anyone taking advantage of the opportunity to harm Falling Jade Island. In addition to the 4 island masters, Luigi's son, Lu Chen, was also going in this time. The other 3 island masters also brought along one of their more capable children. In addition, they brought 50 experts with them. Although the number of people was a little less than the other major factions, it was still a good lineup. Although the number wasn't much, the quality made up for it. Not long after Luigi arrived, Caesar also arrived. Beside him were Zicheng, Eve, and Rika. Rika originally didn't want to take the risk, but this was the tomb of the sea god, and she was a water magician. The temptation was too great, so she had no choice but to take the risk. Rika followed behind Zicheng with a smile on her face. Her relationship with the girls in the dormitory was very strained. Even Anika, who had always been close to her, was gradually drifting away from her. At this time, only Zicheng and Eve were willing to be friends with her, so Rika had been following Zicheng all this time. Although Zicheng's background wasn't high and she was only the daughter of a concubine, she was treated like a goddess in school. Who knew how many male magicians who adored her? Although Rika had always thought that Zicheng wasn't bad, she wouldn't be so devoted to someone like Eve. Moreover, based on Rika's observation, Eve was almost crazy. Even if Eve and Zicheng's relationship was good, it was too abnormal for them to be so close that they were willing to die for her. It wasn't just Eve, there were also some male students who loved Zicheng's tomb. Among these people, many of them had become more and more retarded after falling in love with Zicheng. As male students, because they liked Zicheng, they mercilessly taught a lesson to the girls who talked bad about Zicheng. That crazy look was no different from a lunatic. The closer Rika got to Zicheng and the others, the more problems she discovered. Although Zicheng was really good to her and even gave her a high-grade sensory stone, she still couldn't completely open her heart to Zicheng. This was also the reason why Zicheng felt that Rika's favorability was especially difficult to raise. If she couldn't wholeheartedly love and trust someone, how could her favorability reach 100%? Unfortunately, Zicheng didn't know how to read minds. If she knew that Rika, who had always been by her side and followed her lead, was already suspecting her, she definitely wouldn't have let Rika live. The favorability system was her biggest secret. No matter who it was, as long as they came into contact with this secret, they would definitely die. It was because she didn't know that the two of them could coexist peacefully. Even when they came to explore the sea god's tomb, he brought her along. In their small group, only Zicheng and the other 2 had come to explore the sea god's tomb. The others were more self-aware and didn't want to enter this kind of place where there was only a slim chance of survival. Kaiser had a good impression of Zicheng, so when he came to explore the sea god's tomb this time, he knew that Zicheng was also coming, so he invited her along. He didn't even mind that she had 2 burdens by her side. Luwuji and Kaiser's arrival made the hearts of the aristocratic families who had been waiting for the sea god's tomb to tremble. Now, they were just waiting for the last key. As long as that key arrived, the sea god's tomb would immediately open. When that time came, there would be a lot of good things inside. When they thought about the large amounts of demonic tools, sacred tools, and divine tools inside, just thinking about it made them want to immediately rush in. If it wasn't for the restriction in front of them, these people would have rushed in long ago. Ming Shi brought a jur and the others over late. When they arrived, the sea was completely occupied by a large group of ships. They couldn't even think about passing through. Seeing the large group of ships blocking their path, a jur didn't feel good. So many people. Although he already knew that many people would come here, he still didn't expect there to be so many people. He remembered that when the 2-realm battlefield opened the sea god's tomb, there weren't so many people at that time. Ajur didn't think that the 2-realm battlefield didn't open by accident this time. Before it opened, no one had time to prepare. If people knew that the sea god's tomb would open, how could there only be so few people going last time? Tens of thousands would be nothing. That's normal. The news of the sea god's tomb opening has been spreading for a while. Although the heavenly wind continent is big, it's not like there aren't any communication methods. This much time is enough for the aristocratic families and the royal families of various countries to send people over. Matson said. Even the royal families of various countries sent people over. Emogue didn't think that even the royal families would come. He originally thought that the people who came were from the various aristocratic families. That's for sure. Why are the 4 great empires so strong? Isn't it because they're descendants of gods? Another reason is that the 4 great empires all have divine weapons from the god realm guarding them. Although the royal families of the other countries aren't descendants of gods, they can still have divine weapons. With divine weapons, they probably think that they'll have the same status as the 4 great aristocratic families. Margaret said with disdain. Those countries were all thinking about how to become existences like the 4 great empires. If they had the time to think about other things, why didn't they think about how to govern their own countries better? You're thinking too much. Ajur sneered. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's hurry up and think of a way to get there. There are so many ships between here and the sea god's tomb. What if we can't get there? Matson said with some difficulty. At this moment, they were in a sea not far from Jade Drop Island. Below this sea was the location of the sea god's tomb. That's right, the sea god's tomb was at the bottom of the sea. If one wanted to enter the sea god's tomb, they had to enter from the bottom of the sea. The entrance was a whirlpool at the bottom of the sea. As long as one jumped into the whirlpool, they would be brought to the entrance of the sea god's tomb. Chapter 355. There were too many people waiting to jump into the whirlpool. Everyone wanted to grab a good spot so they could get more treasures later. Just jump over, Fengwu said with a stoic expression as she chewed on her lollipop. In Fengwu's opinion, it was too easy to jump over. Couldn't they just use their qinggong? Ajur and the others were so stupid. Ajur, who didn't know that the Fengwu girl was looking down on his intelligence, nodded after hearing Fengwu's idea. He thought that it was a good idea, but it never occurred to him that if he really did that, the people on the other ships might not even let him jump over their boats. Didn't you see that someone tried to jump over, only to be knocked into the sea by a fishing pole? Some of the boats were hired by adventurers, while others were used by large families. Those who wanted to explore the tomb had already reached the central area. Those who stayed behind had only one goal, to prevent the people behind from approaching and reduce the number of opponents in front. So, although jumping over was feasible, it was too much of a test of strength. Those who weren't strong enough would be knocked into the water by the guards on the boats. It would be difficult for them to get back up. Look at the people on the boats. They're all holding sticks and beating people who want to jump over. Are you sure you want to jump over? Margaret asked carefully. What does it matter? They'll be beaten up because they're weak. Xiao Wu and I will be fine, Ajur said confidently. Margaret was speechless. His words were so reasonable that she didn't know what to say. Let's go. Don't waste any more time. Let's all go together. Ajur didn't want to spend all his time chatting. Wait. At that moment, Ming-Shi suddenly reached out and grabbed Ajur. Ajur, Riot, Emogue, you three stay behind, Ming-Shi said. What? I don't want to. Senior Ming-Shi, it's so rare to see the opening of the sea god's tomb. I might only see it once in my life. How can you bear to not let me go? When He Gue heard that the sea god's tomb expedition that he had been looking forward to for so long was going to come to nothing, he felt extremely uncomfortable. Senior Ming-Shi, why won't you let us go? Riot was a little disappointed. I object. It's fine if you don't let the two of them go, but why can't you let me go? Ajur, who thought of himself as a first-rate fighter, had no interest in being left behind. Ajur, don't you think you're going overboard? Senior Riot and I aren't bad either. Why do you make it sound like we're dragging you down? Emogue couldn't take it anymore. These words sounded really disgusting. If not for the fact that he couldn't beat him, Emogue would have beaten him up long ago. Even Riot, who usually had a good temper, glared at Ajur. Margaret thought, you've really drawn a lot of hatred. Ajur, you're a fire magician. None of us know how strong the suppression of fire magicians in the sea god's tomb is. It's too risky for you to go down there. Emogue and Riot, you're not suitable to explore the sea god's tomb with your current strength. If you want to enter the sea god's tomb, you should focus on improving your strength first. As the leader of this expedition, Ming-Shi always prioritized the safety of his teammates in everything he did. The trip to the sea god's tomb was full of danger. Ajur's strength would definitely be suppressed. Moreover, Riot and Emogue were considered geniuses among their peers, but they were still too weak. If they went down there, Ming-Shi wasn't confident that he could bring them back safely. After considering all kinds of factors, Ming-Shi finally made the decision. Ming-Shi was the leader. Although they were unwilling, they had no choice but to listen to him. Margaret was very proud. She and Matson weren't forced to go down there. Wait, Senior Ming-Shi, what about the two of them? Why are they allowed to go? Ajur looked at Margaret and her brother, unconvinced. Why were these two weaklings allowed to go, but he, an expert, couldn't? Was there any justice in this world? Ming-Shi looked at him strangely. Ajur suddenly felt like he had asked a stupid question. The two of them aren't part of our team. It's not up to me whether they go or not. Sure enough, after hearing Ming-Shi's words, he realized that Ming-Shi really couldn't control them. Margaret made a funny face at Ajur. Her expression was indescribably annoying. Ajur ground his teeth. Don't think I won't beat you up just because you're a woman. Let's fight one-on-one if you dare. Of course, Margaret didn't care about the killing intent in Ajur's eyes. She was in a good mood as she waved at the three pitiful fellows left on the ship. Then, she jumped into the air with Ming-Shi and left with a wave of her hand. Ajur and the other two were thrown to the back of her mind just like that. Little Bun Feng Yi was left on the ship. Originally, Feng Wu had placed Feng Yi in her spatial ring. Later, Ajur and the others didn't want to go, so they could help take care of the child. Little Bun didn't like to be locked up in the spatial ring anyway. Since there was a nanny ready, Little Bun didn't need to go into the spatial ring. The three men became nannies again. Fortunately, Little Bun Yi wasn't the kind of kid who liked to cry. Little Bun Yi didn't cause any trouble for the three nannies. Under Ming-Shi's lead, the four of them easily jumped from ship to ship. It wasn't that no one wanted to hit them, but the four of them weren't weak at all. They didn't even have the chance to attack. Often, they would have already jumped over by the time they raised their hands. This speed wasn't slow at all. With the last jump, the four of them directly jumped into the whirlpool. After a moment of dizziness, the four of them appeared in front of a huge and magnificent palace. This palace was completely made of crystal. It shone with a moving luster in the sea, bringing with it endless temptation. It made people want to enter. The door of the palace was very tall. It was so tall that it made people think that the owner of this palace was a giant. There were 2 huge water-type magical beasts carved on the door. These 2 magical beasts were both water-type divine beasts. They were 2 identical seahorse divine beasts. Legend said that these 2 divine beasts used to pull the carriage for the sea god. After the sea god died, they returned to the spiritual realm. However, there will remain on this door. Without the key to open the door, no one could enter the sea god's tomb. Island Master Lu, young Master Caesar, please open this door as soon as possible. An elder of the family couldn't help but say. The others also had a greedy look. They couldn't wait to enter and search for the treasures inside. Friend, since you've come out. We're just waiting for that key of yours. Caesar suddenly shouted in the direction of Ming Shi and the others. The people in that direction looked at each other. After confirming that he wasn't talking to them, they consciously retreated to the sides. When they retreated, Ming Shi and the others were exposed. Chapter 356. The people in that direction all looked at each other. After confirming that the words weren't directed at them, they all consciously retreated to the sides. Once they retreated, they exposed Ming Shi and the others. My friends, please work with me and Island Lord Lu to open the sea god's tomb. Kaiser looked at Ming Shi and the others and cupped his hands in greeting. Please. Ming Shi smiled faintly. Lu Wuji, Kaiser, and Ming Shi each held a key and placed it in the corresponding groove beside the door. The door that had been as immovable as a mountain immediately let out an earth-shattering rumble after the keys were placed. After a violent tremor, the door that was several dozen meters tall slowly opened with a creak. After 5 minutes of searching, the huge door finally opened completely. A long corridor so long that one couldn't see the end of it appeared in front of everyone. A dazzling white light shone within the door. Luminous pearls hung on both sides of the corridor, illuminating the entire crystal palace like it was daytime. The doors open, the doors open. Everyone go in quickly. Someone shouted. Following this impatient and excited shout, a bunch of adventurers and small clans that had already made up their minds to take advantage of this opportunity all pushed each other as they rushed through the door. In the eyes of the large clans, these people were only cannon fodder to explore the path. To them, the more they rushed forward, the more advantageous it was for them. Little Cheng, let's go in quickly. Look at how many people have already gone in. Eve was a little anxious as she watched people continuously rush through the door. Rika was also a little anxious, but she didn't express her impatience when she saw that so many large clans weren't in a hurry. No hurry, let's wait a little longer. Zicheng smiled gently. When he spoke, he was still as gentle as water, as if the tomb of the god of sin in front of him couldn't attract him at all. Seeing that Zicheng didn't seem to be in a hurry, Eve didn't urge him any further and stood to the side obediently. When most of the people had entered, the large clans finally moved. The large clans all entered one after another. Kaiser led Zicheng and the others forward slowly and calmly. After Caesar, it was Lu Wuji and the others. Lu Wuji brought his own people and followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, all the clans that hadn't shown any reaction had left. Fengwu followed Ming Shi and slowly walked along the long corridor. The corridor was so long that it seemed to have no end. There were many people in front of them who had already walked very far, but they still did not seem to have reached the end. Irene, Shozo, and Elisa were walking in the crowd. Shozo and Elisa were both people of high status and had many bodyguards around them. Elisa wanted to explore the tomb of the god of sin, and Shozo and Irene couldn't stop her in time, so they had to take her with them. This trip to the tomb of the god of sin was very dangerous. Irene knew that the sea god was not a friendly god. There were endless dangers hidden in the tomb of the god of sin. If they were not careful, they could die in this place. When she read the original novel, she knew that the female lead had been to the most dangerous dungeons, and the tomb of the sea god was definitely one of them. 3 days ago, Shozo and Irene had formed an alliance. The two of them had the same enemy, Zicheng. In order to deal with Zicheng, the transmigrated female lead and the reincarnated passerby finally joined forces. Irene told Shozo about the dangers that she would encounter in the tomb of the sea god of sin. Shozo told Irene about the world that would be destroyed because of Zicheng's selfishness more than 100 years later. Irene never thought that the female lead would cause the world to be destroyed when she took away the heart of the 5 elements. When the female lead took away the heart of the 5 elements, did she not know that the world would be destroyed because of her? She must have known. With the favorability system, it was impossible for the female lead not to know about this danger, but she still took away the heart of the 5 elements. The female lead was indeed a selfish and heartless woman. To be honest, the female lead had already become a god at that time. Why would she need something like the heart of the 5 elements? She probably sold the heart of the 5 elements directly to the system store in exchange for favorability points. Eren had already told Xia Zhua about the female lead's favorability charger. Shozo finally understood why Zicheng's friends, no matter how bad they were in the past, would immediately live and die for her after meeting her. They would not hesitate to betray the whole world for her. He had always suspected that his brother was controlled by Zicheng's ability to control people's hearts. Now, it seemed that this was most likely the case. Although Irene had confirmed her alliance with Shozo, she did not intend to tell him about her Goldfinger. Instead, she told him a lot about Zicheng. Shozo was not a person who wanted to get to the bottom of things. As long as the two of them had the same goal and Irene had no enmity towards him, he would not ask too much about Irene. Irene suspected that Shozo also had a Goldfinger. Although she was curious about what Shozo's Goldfinger was, she did not ask. She also did not tell Shozo about her Goldfinger. Of course, she would not ask Shozo what his Goldfinger was. Irene and Shozo had already agreed that once they found the heart of the water, they would give it to Shozo. Shozo wanted the heart of the water because he wanted to use it to change his physique. After his physique changed, he would immediately return the heart of the water to its original world. He would not be like Zicheng, who brought destruction to this world because of his selfishness. Zicheng still did not know that 2 people who were hostile towards her had already joined forces. One wanted to destroy the world before she could obtain the heart of the 5 elements. The other wanted to use her as cannon fodder to kill the female lead. No matter what happened to the 3 of them, it had nothing to do with Fengwu. The Fengwu girl held a short sword in her right hand and held Ming Shi's hand in her left. The 4 of them followed the main group in front of them and did not encounter any danger. The only problem now was that the corridor was too long. Since they had entered, they had already walked for half an hour, but they still had not walked out of the corridor. They could not see the end of the corridor and did not know how long they would have to walk. F***CK, why is this road so long? How long do we have to walk? A man pointed in front and complained loudly. How would I know? Let's walk slowly. What's the rush? The other man who was walking with the man was Comma. Where does this lead to? Is there an end to it? People kept complaining that the road was too long. Unfortunately, no matter how much they complained, they could not walk to the end. They had walked for 2 hours. For 2 whole hours, not a single person in this large group of thousands walked out. As time passed, people started to get impatient. Chapter 357. What the hell was going on? Why couldn't they walk out? Could this be an illusion? Questions appeared in everyone's hearts, but no one could give them an answer. Fengwu obediently followed beside Ming Shi, turning a deaf ear to the curses of the people around her. She calmly followed Ming Shi and didn't say anything. On the other hand, Matson and Margaret felt restless in their hearts. Their hearts were stuffy and flustered, and they only wanted to vent. Ming Shi also felt that something was wrong. He didn't think that he was an impatient person, but now, he felt extremely vexed. Fury adjusted his state of mind and calmed himself down a little. However, the others didn't have such good composure. They only felt an inexplicable anger rising in their hearts. Can you King walk faster? What do you mean fast? Are you rushing to reincarnate? What do you mean? Do you not want to live anymore? How dare you talk to a B*TCH like that? Whose B*TCH are you? I think you're the one who doesn't want to live anymore. You're courting death. Take this. Do you think I'm scared of you? Take this. They started a fight at the slightest disagreement. Scenes like this kept appearing. Whether it was members of ordinary small families, solo adventurers, or disciples of various large worlds, all of them had a trace of hostility between their eyebrows. It was clearly a small matter, but it caused them to start a life and death battle. Zicheng secretly took a tranquil pill that he had just exchanged for. Eve and Rika had already started fighting with the adventurers not far away. Magic spells flew everywhere in the long corridor, and the scene of swords clashing could be seen everywhere. Everyone, be careful. There's something wrong with this place. Ming Shi bit his tongue hard to keep himself awake. He originally wanted to see how Fengwu was doing, but when he looked to the side, he realized that Fengwu was fine. She still had that expressionless face, and her eyes were clear. She didn't seem to be affected at all. On the other hand, Margaret and Matson's expressions were a little ugly. There was a faint trace of hostility on their faces. The two of them were still in good spirits. At the very least, they weren't like the others, who beat up everyone they saw. However, it seemed like the two of them wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Ming Shi originally wanted to lead the four of them away from the crowd. Unfortunately, it was no longer a time where they could retreat. Those who were watching from the sidelines had already killed anyone they saw. However, in a short period of time, many people had already been injured or lost their lives. Die. At this moment, a sword came from behind Fengwu, aiming straight for her heart. It was actually trying to kill Fengwu. Fengwu's mood had always been very calm, so when the murderous intent attacked her, she immediately knew. She stretched out her slender hand and directly clamped the sword between her two fingers. Fengwu saw the person behind her clearly the moment she turned her head. She felt that this person looked familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. A trace of doubt flashed through her big eyes. Who are you? Why do you want to kill me? Fengwu asked. Humph. Why are you pretending to be stupid? Because of your obstruction, we lost the key to enter the tomb of the god of sin in the two-realm battlefield. It's all because of you that the Italy family suffered heavy losses. Today, I must kill you all to avenge the people of the Italy family who died. This man was Abel of the Italy family. Abel was one of the first people to receive the news of the tomb of the god of sin in the two-realm battlefield. However, before they could send the news back to the family, they were caught by the Inferno mercenary group and lost the key to enter the tomb of the god of sin. If it weren't for the key, how could the Italy family not obtain the important inheritance in the tomb of the god of sin? How could he not think of how dangerous the tomb of the god of sin was? Even if Fengwu and the others didn't stop them, the Italy family wouldn't be able to obtain anything in the tomb of the god of sin. Abel's eyes were full of hatred as he stared at Fengwu. He asked why he only looked for trouble with Fengwu and not Ming Shi. The reason was very simple. Of course, it was because Fengwu looked like she was easy to bully. Ming Shi had a mysterious aura that was not to be trifled with. The only person Abel wanted to kill from the beginning was Fengwu. Then, he would slowly kill the people who stopped them from escaping. Even Zicheng and Irene were listed as targets. Zicheng and Irene didn't know that they had been targeted by the Italy family and the Lienya family as soon as they came near the tomb of the god of sin. The people of the two families had already discussed that after entering the tomb of the god of sin, they would kill them one by one. Even if they couldn't kill the white-haired young man, they could kill his friends to make him suffer. Also, who knew if one of them was the white-haired young man's sweetheart? Sorry to disappoint you, but it really isn't. Ming Shi calmly kicked Abel in the stomach and sent him flying with his sword. You only dare to attack women. What a despicable person. Ming Shi smiled slightly, but the words he said were as cold as the winter wind. Don't be complacent. Everyone, come out. Let's kill these guys together. Abel didn't do a sneak attack anymore. Since sneak attacks didn't work, he would use the human wave tactic to kill the four of them together. Margaret and Matson, What does this have to do with us? Margaret and Matson were unlucky and were directly killed. The two of them also became the targets of Abel and the others. After Abel roared, more than 30 swordmasters in their swordsman suits appeared from the crowd. They were all hired by Abel, and each of them was paid. This was because the person leading the team this time was the second elder of their family. The second elder had always been a person who prioritized the overall situation. He wouldn't use the family's connections for the grudges of the younger generation. Since he couldn't get any help from his family, he had to find his own way to get people. Although he had to spend a lot of money, as long as he could kill Ming-Shi and the others, he would be able to vent a lot of his anger. As long as he could vent his anger, spending a little money was nothing to Abel. Originally, Abel didn't want to make a move so soon, but now he wanted to kill people. The people he wanted to kill were undoubtedly Ming-Shi and the others. This was why he brought people to seek revenge. Kill. The group of people's eyes were red with killing intent. They rushed towards Ming-Shi and the others, shouting to kill them. Feng Wu pulled out her short sword with one hand and used her other hand to block the sword that was aimed at her chest. Then, she kicked out, sending that person flying and pressing down on a group of people who were about to attack from behind. Ah! The person who was kicked away screamed, and then his whole body fell on the people behind him. The people behind him were pressed down so hard that they almost vomited the food from last night. Chapter 358. Ming-Shi held a silver-white ancient sword in his hand. The patterns on the sword looked very mysterious. He pulled out the long sword elegantly. With a flash of silver sword light, the two people who pounced on him died under his sword. Ming-Shi wasn't a saint. If people wanted to kill him, he wouldn't be merciful and leave them a way out. Since they wanted to kill, they had to be prepared to be killed. Ming-Shi killed two people with one strike. Matson and Margaret weren't bad either. One was a mage and the other was a swordmaster. One was in charge of defense, and the other was in charge of offense. The group of adventurers that Abel found was caught off guard. In a short while, 3 people had died at their hands. Feng Wu didn't show any mercy either. She stabbed the people who pounced on her. If she didn't kill them, they would keep pouncing on her. The Feng Wu girl was annoyed. Abel brought more than 30 people, but they all died under the swords of Ming-Shi and the others. After Margaret and Matson killed the last adventurer, they walked towards Abel, who was already scared stiff. "I'll fight it out with you." He raised his sword. He didn't even think about running away. Instead, he raised his sword and rushed towards Margaret. Did he really think that women were easier to bully? Margaret shot out a seed and cast a spell. The seed grew very quickly, and eventually, it turned into a sturdy vine-like plant. It wrapped around Abel's body tighter and tighter until he died of suffocation. Done. Margaret clapped her hands. That's strange. Where did Ming-Shi and Xiao Wu go? Matson suddenly realized that his 2 companions, who had been fighting together, had suddenly disappeared. He was shocked. When did the 2 of them leave? How come he and Margaret didn't notice? Where are they? Where did they go? Margaret was also shocked. Ming-Shi and Feng Wu weren't people who would leave their companions behind and run away. So the question was, where did they go? They didn't have to think for long before they knew the answer. A red light suddenly appeared and surrounded the siblings. Under the red light, the 2 of them disappeared. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of waves kept ringing in Feng Wu's ears. She opened her eyes and saw that the corridor was gone. Instead, a vast ocean appeared before her eyes. Feng Wu did not know what had happened. She only remembered that she was clearly killing enemies. As she was killing, a light surrounded her. When she opened her eyes again, she had already appeared in this place. This was an isolated island. Not far from her, there were many people who had arrived earlier than Feng Wu or were appearing. They all came to this place inexplicably. They didn't even know how they got here. The surrounding people were all on guard, carefully guarding against others. Once they entered the tomb of the god of sin, everyone was an opponent, and no one could be trusted easily. "Miss, may I go with you?" A voice that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze suddenly sounded. Fengwu turned her head and saw a thin man standing beside her. The man's appearance was not very handsome in the eyes of this continent, but he was delicate and good-looking. In addition, his voice and clear eyes added points to his appearance, making it impossible for people to dislike him. Fengwu stared at the man for 3 seconds and came to a conclusion. This person was not annoying. The Fengwu girl's intuition was very sharp. She could mostly tell whether a person was good or bad. Fengwu didn't have a good feeling about this man, but he was not a bad person. "Okay." Fengwu nodded. She didn't feel any pressure at all. The young man was stunned. He didn't expect Fengwu to agree so easily. The young man had thought of 100 reasons to persuade the other party to agree to take him with her, but he didn't expect that the 100 reasons would not be used at all. The other party agreed so easily. This made Xiaozhua feel that he, who had always been a playboy, was a bit stupid. Not only did Xiaozhua not expect Fengwu to agree so easily, the people standing not far from the two also didn't expect that they would have to worry about being stabbed in the back at this time. Unless they were already acquaintances, who would ally with an unfamiliar stranger? They all thought that Fengwu would not agree. That young man's strength was weak. There was no benefit in allying with him, and they would have to spend time to protect him. It was not worth it at all. However, the Fengwu girl agreed just like that. Moreover, she agreed without any reluctance. This made the surrounding people feel that they couldn't understand. Should they say that this girl was simple or stupid? "Thank you." Xiaozhua was slightly stunned, but he sincerely thanked her. Xiaozhua was originally protected by the butler, Yuan, and some guards, but after the chaotic battle, the people around him gradually disappeared. Xiaozhua, who had been standing at the side watching the chaotic battle, noticed something. Every person who killed 9 people would be surrounded by a red light and be teleported away. The people who were originally protecting him were all teleported away when he killed the 9th person. With Irene's help, he finally killed 9 people with his own hands and was teleported out. Elisa and Irene were still in that place before he was teleported out. He didn't know how they were doing. Xiaozhua was a bit worried, but he also knew that if she was with Irene, Elisa would most likely be fine. As a transmigrator, Irene definitely had her own means of self-protection. As a princess, Elisa had brought many good things with her. Even if she had a detonation scroll, he believed that she could easily kill 9 people and be teleported out. Among all of them, the only one who could possibly be in danger was himself. Thinking about it, it was really depressing. This feeling of depression only lasted for a few seconds before it was forgotten by Xiaozhua. He was the Xiaozhua who had experienced 100 years of turmoil. He was no longer the young Xiaozhua who would be sad for half a day because of a few words from others. "No need to thank me. I don't hate the feeling you give me." Fengwu tilted her head and said. Xiaozhua chuckled. He originally wanted to team up with Fengwu because she was the young Moon King's friend. Someone who could become friends with Moon King definitely wouldn't be a treacherous person. Now, he admired this girl. He didn't believe that with her strength, she couldn't see that he didn't have any abilities. He didn't have any dou qi or magic. He was just a normal person. Yet, she agreed to let him follow her so easily because he didn't hate it. This girl looked like a clear-minded person. He liked to interact with people like this because he wasn't a complicated person. Chapter 359. Perhaps it was because Fengwu's aura had always been very pure, so she could judge whether a person was good or bad based on their aura. For example, when facing Zicheng, many people said that Zicheng was a kind and gentle woman, but Fengwu couldn't have a good impression of her because she gave Fengwu a very complicated feeling. Fengwu didn't like her because her aura was very messy. Of course, Fengwu wouldn't ignore someone because she didn't like their aura. She just couldn't see Zicheng as a friend. Similarly, Irene gave Fengwu a strange feeling. When she looked at people, there was often something in her eyes that others couldn't understand. Fengwu didn't care what it was in her eyes, but she also didn't want to be friends with her. Although they had experienced danger together and spent some time together, their relationship couldn't be compared to Elena and the others. To Fengwu, they were just two classmates that she knew. Therefore, Fengwu girl was a girl who believed in her feelings. Xiaozhua gave her a good impression, so she didn't hesitate to accept him as an ally. However, did Fengwu girl understand the meaning of an ally? The answer was, of course no. She now only saw this young man as a friend that she could make. In times of danger, she didn't mind protecting this young man. I'm Xiaozhua. Xiaozhua smiled slightly. I'm Fengwu. Fengwu's face was still expressionless. After exchanging names, the two of them were considered to have formed an alliance. Beside them, the people who had also arrived on this small island were also looking for acquaintances who had come together. A few of them had already formed an alliance with acquaintances. However, most of them were alone at the side. They didn't feel safe leaving their backs to strangers. More and more people came to the island. In a short time, there were already hundreds of people standing on the island. Xiaozhua estimated that there were at least 200 people on the island. Gradually, no one was teleported over. After half an hour, no one was teleported over. Everyone had guessed that the teleportation had stopped. There were many people who entered the sea god's tomb. Even if most of them died in the corridor, there were definitely more than 200 people left. Where were the others? Where were they teleported to? Was there more than one place like this? Then why were they separated? Did they want to be tested separately? When Erin told her about the important things to take note of in the sea god's tomb, she said that it was very strange. Even Zi Cheng, who was protected by the world's consciousness, was almost in danger. Ordinary people would be in great danger if they entered. Irene advised him to give up on entering this place. Because he was determined to obtain the Heart of Water, he ignored Irene's advice and insisted on coming to this place. Where was Irene at the moment? She was also on an island, and Elisa was with her. Both of them were worried about Shouzo's safety. Irene was cursing Xiaz. Author, come out if you have the ability. I won't beat you to death. Irene originally thought that she had read the original work. Although she knew how dangerous the sea god's tomb was, she didn't take it to heart. But what was going on now? Why did the way to clear the dungeon change? Yes, everything Irene experienced was different from the original work. Even the way to enter the sea god's tomb had changed. In the original work, the sea god's tomb appeared, but only 2 keys were found. No one knew where the last key was. So when the sea god's tomb was opened, Luigi, the male lead Caesar, and a few influential figures of the big families used their power to find powerful array masters to break the restriction outside the door. After a month of hard work and gathering the wisdom of 100 array masters, they finally opened the door outside. Just when everyone thought that they could enter the sea god's tomb, the mythical beast carved on the door came to life. Then a massacre began. The mythical beast's consciousness would kill everyone who entered the sea god's tomb, except for those who had the keys. It was a fierce battle. The powerful swordsmen and magicians were unable to resist the power of the mythical beast and were torn into pieces. Too many people had died in that battle. Although the mythological beast's consciousness had been wiped out by the people present at the time, there were only a few people who had survived. Those who survived either joined Luigi's camp or Caesar's camp and entered the sea god's tomb together. The adventure that followed was different from what they had experienced. Could it be that the dungeon was different because the 3 keys were gathered this time? Originally, when she came, she did not know that the 3rd key had appeared. She had made up her mind that if it was really like what was written in the book and they had to use 100 array masters to break through the restriction, then she would quickly retreat with Shouzo and the others. When the 2 mythical beasts guarding the door were destroyed, she would then join Zicheng's team and enter together with them. She did not expect that when the 3 keys were gathered this time, everyone would successfully enter the sea god's tomb. It was not like what was written in the book, where the sea god's tomb only opened after most people died. The more Irene thought about it, the more her head hurt. The memories in her mind were no longer of much help to her. It seemed like she could only rely on herself in the future. Irene did not know that in the original book, Zicheng did not enter the sea god's tomb through the normal way. In addition, the mythical beasts guarding the door were already dead, so the dangers after entering the sea god's tomb were smaller. No one knew that all the tests in the sea god's tomb were controlled by the wills of the two mythical beasts. After losing control of their consciousness, they didn't encounter anything scary except for 1 or 2 instance dungeons. Zicheng's encounter with the Heart of Water was much simpler. But now, such a good thing was impossible. If Zicheng and the others entered the dungeon in normal difficulty, after collecting all 3 keys, they would be able to unlock both hard and nightmare difficulty dungeons. As for who would be unlucky enough to encounter the nightmare dungeon, that would depend on the will of the heavens. The sea was covered with dark clouds, and the strong winds were constantly blowing on people's bodies, making them feel cold and painful all over. People began to feel restless. Everyone was in a dilemma. What should they do next? Should they stay on the island and wait for the next development, or should they boldly leave the island and take a look outside? This was a difficult choice to make. It would be good if they made the right choice, but if they made the wrong choice, they might encounter the most fatal danger. Everyone was waiting to see who would make the first move. But because everyone had the same idea, no one made a decision first. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.